The world is racing to get back to normal. We all want to meet up again. But after a year of being locked down, it takes time to get back to normal. When we are going through things, we tend to turn to our friends to talk to, but they don't necessarily give us the best advice. We all need help from time to time, and asking for support is a sign of strength. It is not weak. Help is available immediately through Talkspace, who will match your needs with a licensed professional. You could get the help right away. Start feeling better with a single message. Match with a licensed therapist when you go to Talkspace.com, and you will get $100 off your first month if you use the promo code Shaun, SHAUN. That's $100 off when you use the promo code Shaun at Talkspace.com. So today we have another member of Leap on the podcast. You've seen what we've done with Neil Woods. He got a phenomenal response. And as part of our mission on this channel, which is, the statement is, end the war on drugs, take all that money and go after the predators with it. There's been a total misappropriation and misallocation of resources. Suzanne Sharkey is an ex-cop, and she is a Leap kind of. What's your position in Leap then?
Oh, my official is co-executive director.
Co-executive
Sounds very
director
like,
of Leap UK. These are the people changing the hearts and minds where it matters, in politics, with the legislators. Because we've got to get the laws changed to end this madness. And we're going to get into that. But first, I want to go through what led Suzanne to becoming a cop and her experience in the police force and how she came to this conclusion about the war on drugs. So thank you very much for coming on.
Pleasure.
So what part of the country were you raised in, to start with?
I was raised in Northumberland, actually. I went to school in a place called Hexham, very countrified town, but sort of based around Newcastle. I'm based in Newcastle now.
So you don't speak like a Geordie?
No, I haven't got a strong Geordie accent.
And when did you first hear rave music?
For me, it was the early 90s.
Early 90s.
Early 90s.
Fellow raver in the house.
Yeah.
And what were you like at school then?
Oh, God. Wasn't expecting that question. At school, you know what? In my head, I was a rebel and I wanted to stand up and defy teachers and all that. But actually, I didn't get into trouble. I didn't put my head out there, and I had a couple of detentions. I didn't even skive off school. And you know what? For me, it might come out like, I didn't enjoy school, and I always had this feeling of not fitting in.
Were you bullied or anything?
I was bullied in middle school, and but this is the really funny thing, is because I always had friends, and I always had groups of friends. I was very sporty, did all the team sports, but like inside, I felt like the word to say is I just didn't feel I fitted in anywhere, and I felt a bit of a fake. I felt I was always a fraud, trying to fit in and be liked, and I was, but I still didn't sort of feel comfortable in my own skin, really.
I was exactly the same at that age, because I was one of the littlest in my year group. So I was getting so beat up by the rugby players during the breaks. I'd be hiding out in the technical drawing room, scared to go out in case I was going to get picked on. And it's hard to adapt, isn't it, when you're in that, when you're at that age and you don't have the skill set to socialise properly and mix with people. And kids are so cruel, aren't they, as well?
Oh, kids are cruel. And yeah, it's just, I didn't get the point of anything.
Yeah.
Like, I just felt, what's the point? I mean, I know you're supposed to get exams and do this, and this is the way it goes, but I still was like, to what end?
Were there any subjects that pleased you?
Art, creatively, art, anything, and sport.
You like to do the sport then?
Yeah.
So what kind of friends did you make at that age? Were they like other people who weren't in with the...
No, I was never really in with the in crowd.
Yeah.
More so when I got into sixth form, because there was a lot less of you, and sort of everyone else had gone on to do, whether they'd left to do apprenticeships and YOP schemes as they were at the time.
Yeah.
So I was sort of, but I wasn't even really in an in crowd in sixth form. Then I got into sort of, God, this is going to put a load of lists of young farmers. It's a massive big thing in Northumberland and in the countryside. And that was like basically going out a lot and getting drunk a lot. And,
Scrumpy parties.
yeah. So I did a lot of that. And also with sport and the sports teams that I was in. I like saying, I had friends and went out and did stuff, but, inside, I just felt they're only doing it to be nice, like,
Yeah.
because I've been dragged along by such and such, not that actually they like me for me, although I didn't know who the hell I was.
Did you ever try and analyse what the root cause of that insecurity was?
Oh, well, I do now. Well, I have an understanding of that now, but like for the majority of my life, I didn't know what was wrong with me. Gosh, it's hard because it's like it comes down to self-worth. It was that sense of I had no self-worth, no self-esteem, no confidence. And I like saying where that came from. And obviously, like my story unfolds is that I ended up problematic substance user, alcohol and other drugs. And I always say alcohol and other drugs because alcohol is a drug, which is important in the scheme of things. And it wasn't until I got into recovery that I started to unpick. There's always that massive question when you realisation that I have an issue. Issue's a bit of a light word to use for it.
I think everybody's got issues or has had issues.
Well, yeah, and obviously the thing with alcohol and drugs were my medicine. They were the answer.
Self-medication. Same
They
here.
were the answer to that confidence to go out there, be the life and soul of the party. Let's do this. I'll do it. Here's one. I'll have two.
Same here.
All of that, and that lasted for a while, and then got older. Life, there's always this big sort of people want to know, is it nature, is it nurture when it's to do with problematic substance use? Again, I use problematic substance use because language is really important. Alky, junkie, all those words, they're really ugly words, and
I like to say people with addiction issues.
Yeah, I think that's great. But then to sort of realise that it's an issue and then get into recovery, that's a huge flipping gap. Yeah. But it was. Yeah, but so back to sort of nature nurture, because is it genetical? And you can look at my family, and there is alcoholism in the family. There's depression in the family. There's childhood trauma for me. Like I said, I'm one of 4 girls, and we're all different, and we'll probably see my life experiences growing up from a different way.
Was the sibling rivalry? I know me and my sister, there was a period of that.
No, I was the odd one out. Well, this is my perception. I was the odd one out. I was the one that got into trouble. I was the one that caused the trouble. I was the arsey one. I was the one that would sort of sit there like that.
Where were you in the pecking order of age?
I was third.
Third, okay.
So, and my younger sister, bless her, she was such a goody two-shoes. She still is. She still is.
Did you think you had to have something to prove then, to act a bit wild to impress the older sisters? I wanted to be. It's that bit. I wanted to be different as well. Do you know what? It's that crazy thing of wanting to fit in, but then be different. Yeah.
And stand out and be noticed. I suppose. I think maybe that was part of it. One of 4 girls. My mum was looking after us all. My dad was out He was a farmer working all the time. You know, whether it was an attention thing. And again, it's really important, you know, I don't blame my parents. They did the best they did the best they could. You know, and as with my dad, he wasn't a great dad, but I understand how he was and how he behaved now. And what that means for me is that I can recognise that behaviour in me and I don't replicate it with my kids. So sort of changing that cycle, it's just because there's addiction in my family and it could be genetical, doesn't mean that I have to pass that on.
So you're saying your dad was like a workaholic who hit the bottle?
Yeah. Yeah. In my view, because like I said, I've never really asked my sisters what they think, but my dad was a functioning alcoholic.
And he was absent a lot.
Yeah, I mean, he was really hard-working farmer, you know, out early morning to late at night. He was a perfectionist, you know, nobody could do the job as good as him, and had he couldn't show emotion. You know, he didn't say he loved me. I can't remember him ever hugging me as a child, or, you know, those things that, you know, helped me with homework or anything. I mean, he did once with my maths, and then he lost his temper with me because I couldn't understand it, and he was very intelligent and couldn't understand why I couldn't understand it. You know, it's, you know, this isn't, it's not uncommon, you know, but I thought I was the only one. You know, everyone else's parents seemed perfect and they were there and making cupcakes and turning up to the sports events and all that stuff, and that's actually not true.
Good job there wasn't an Instagram back then.
Oh, God.
Did you grow up with animals then?
Yes, I did, yeah.
Was that fun?
You know what, I should say it was. You know, like in the country, in the Northumbrian countryside, with horses and cattle and sheep and lambs, and I hated it.
You hated it?
I hated
Were you
it.
pining for the opposite then, the city?
Yeah, that's why I live in Newcastle upon Tyne in the city now. It's a sort of a standing joke when I sort of go back out there. I'm like, like, you know, there's no Waitrose or the stores like that I can go and get my milk. It's a lifestyle choice. You know, it is. It's beautiful, and I like going there. But when I get back into the city, I'm sort of like, yeah.
So, all right, we left off then where you were at sixth form college, and just to explain to the Americans, perhaps, in the UK, if you finish high school and you want to go to university, you go for 2 years at a thing called a sixth form college, where you have to choose what back then was called A-levels. And you, like, at university you specialise in a subject, but at sixth form college you can have like 3 or 4 A-level selections of subjects you're interested in. What A-levels did you choose?
Oh, God, this is embarrassing. This is like, right, so, yeah, so it was Queen Elizabeth High School, so they actually had a sixth form. And I got the grades to get into that sixth form. And I did environmental studies, which is a combination of geography and biology.
Wow.
I don't think they even do it now. God, what else did I do? Oh, I did English and I did food and nutrition.
Good grief. That's a collection, isn't it?
It was, well, like I say, I didn't know what I wanted to do, who I wanted to be, so it was sort of, that's what I could do. You know, at the time though, you know, I didn't get good enough O levels, GCSEs to do like straight. So there were sort of like ones for those not massively academically minded.
If you were unhappy then in the high school environment, did you start to find some happiness in sixth form?
No.
Really?
I mean, I didn't go around with the face on all the time because that was part of it. I was acting, which came into use later on. But I was acting the part of trying to fit in, and maybe, I don't know what's wrong, but so sort of my first addictions of choice, if you like, I had an eating disorder, so I had bulimia and exercise, and I could hide both those really well to change the way I feel. And then at the time in sixth form, it was alcohol.
So did the eating disorder start around that time then in sixth form?
Yeah, it started around when I was 16.
Yeah. Wow, okay. And then you set your sights on uni.
I set my sights on, I set my sights on, I'm sort of like a jack of all trades, master of none. I sort of fell into a friend of mine who was like my best friend at the time, we were both really into sport, and she decided she was going to do PE college. So I thought, oh, well, I might as well try that because I like sport.
Yeah.
So I ended up getting into what was Brighton Poly, which is Brighton University now. And I went to
The South Coast.
the South Coast, as far away from home as possible, and did a BEd in PE.
Good grief. It's got quite an atmosphere, Brighton, doesn't it?
Brighton, something. However, I have to add that the sports side of it was all based in Eastbourne. So the sport, the BEd to be a PE teacher, and sports science, and the hotel catering, bizarrely, was all in Eastbourne. But we did have a few good trips out to the Zap Club in Brighton.
What year was that? Just so I can get an idea of the kind of music.
Oh, that would have been 1987 to 1990.
Oh, that was Summer of Love around then, wasn't it?
Yeah.
In the rave scene. That was when people were just like knocking warehouses in and plane hangers in and just setting up the parties. So were you part of that then? Was it it that music?
I mean, I was always into that sort of music.
Yeah.
And I specialised in dance in the PE place.
Yeah.
But at that time, we were sort of quite a really close-knit community, so there wasn't that many other people that were like that.
Yeah.
So, like anybody remembers the days in Eastbourne, there was a massive nightclub at the end of the pier, which changed its name. I can't remember what it was first called, but it ended up being called the Roxy. And that is sort of, we used to come in like down the Roxy, and Ziggy's on a Monday night, and actually TJ's on a Thursday, and then the student bar on a Friday.
So it sounds like you were starting to fit in more finally.
Yeah.
You'd found your footing.
Yeah, you know what? My friends that I lived with, so I ended up living with 5 other girls in a house. I'm actually going for a reunion next week to meet them. And so over 30 years, they're sort of like my core friends. Like, you know, like the friends you go back to and you just pick up where you left off. Yeah.
All right, then.
Although I still didn't feel like I fitted in.
Really?
No, yeah.
Still
that.
Wow.
They're only being nice to me.
How long did you last in physical education then?
Well, so when I finished, I had to move back home like most students have to do when they've graduated. And my husband, who was still my husband, he was in the year above me. And he was actually from Middlesbrough. So I moved back home. He was in Middlesbrough, and then I started looking for jobs there. So I got my first teaching job in Newcastle in a West Denton High School. It was...
it had
it
its
led
challenges.
me to join the police, shall we say.
It had its challenges, I guess.
Yeah. Well, the difficult thing was that, so I just started teaching and I was like 22. So like the kids in like sixth form, they were just a few years younger than me. So when I was out down in Newcastle clubbing, standing on a podium dancing, and then I look down and then I see the sixth form, it's like, shit, you know. I mean, exactly that. And then I'm getting dragged down off the podium because you're not allowed to dance on the podium by the bouncers. And then I'm like being arsy with the bouncers. And it's like, I mean, I look back and go, bloody hell, I don't know how I kept that job.
Some conflicts of interest there.
Yeah. I mean, they shouldn't have been in the club because they were actually underage, but, you know, I wasn't going to. So it was difficult. It was difficult because it was a difficult school.
Yeah.
You know, I was in a really good PE department actually. But it's hard trying to control a class of 30 16-year-old girls.
Yeah.
It's
what
tough.
attracted you to the police? How did that come to your attention?
So my brother-in-law joined the police. Whilst I was teaching, and again...
So you'd got married at that
No,
stage of the
I didn't
story?
get married till a lot later. Okay. So again, me, like, oh God, I used to hate Monday mornings going to school. And, like, I still had that feeling of, I'm going to get found out, I'm a fraud here. People are going to find out that I can't really teach, which again is ridiculous because I've just done a degree for 4 years. But this is my head. This is just the way my head works.
Yeah.
You know, I don't like it. What else can I do? Almost like changing my environment, changing the people, because I'll do that before they find out, or I get into trouble or something. And because I was dealing with very difficult kids, and speaking to my brother-in-law, it was like, I don't have to teach these kids. I could just bloody arrest them all. So not quite as easy as that, but it was like, you know what, I'm going to try. And so I applied to Cleveland Police Force, and because my husband was in Middlesbrough, and Northumbria Police Force. I failed the Cleveland entrance on the interview, and but I got into Northumbria. And at the time, I don't know what it's like now, but at the time, very rigorous interviews. It's over a couple of days, all these team building exercises and questions and fitness and all of that. So it was, and actually the question that I think got me in was like, the guys that were interviewing me said, well, would you give yourself the job as a police officer? So I sort of went, yeah, yes. Although my head was going, really? Anyway, I got it, whether it was that or not, I don't know. But I got in and started my career in the police force.
So when you got accepted, how did that feel?
Scary. Like, it was like, wow, I've got in. Or like, wow, I've got in. Fuck, what do I do now? New start, new career. Let's give it a go. And I did.
Because you've got to be very brave to join the police, because it's a job where, you could go to work and not come home if certain situations arose. The things like that, the risks, the consequences, the things like that go through your mind, or you were more idealistic?
I think I was more idealistic. I was young, as well. I know it's hard for people to grasp the idea of before social media, internet, instant sort of information, that I had as a bit idealistic that, joining the police, I could do some good as well. I'd be in communities, catching the baddies, the real criminals, making the world a better place, if you like. And I never really thought of the really risky situations that I would end up in or face, or actually, the near misses, which I think you don't, until after the event happens, you don't sort of realise how risky it could be until you look back and go, that was a bit risky. And I think now, I would say now it's even more dangerous to be in the police force than it's ever been.
So the kind of person who would jump on a speaker then and just dance in front of the whole crowd of people has perhaps a bit of a risk-taking side to them, a bit of an adrenaline side to them.
Yeah.
Do you think then that the police, it was like there was an excitement there as well? I'm not sat behind, I'm not doing the 9 to 5 office job. Anything could happen.
Yeah. That was the idea. But then when you're sitting in a patrol car at 3 o'clock in the morning on night shift, it's not quite as exciting.
Oh.
But that's a small part of it.
Before we get to that then, you got your letter, you've been accepted. What happens next? Is there some kind of training you've got to go through?
Yeah, again, I don't know what the training process is now. So we, Akeley Heads, which is a place in Durham, there's various training places throughout England for police officers. And at the time, where the training was in Durham, which is literally just down the road from me. So it was great. But you got 15 weeks intensive training, so like Monday to Friday, with all the cohort of people that had been accepted at that time. And you're on like a 2-year probation at the time. So you go and do your 10 weeks intensive, learning about the law, role play, all that stuff, fitness, bonding with other police officers. And within that, you get a break and you get an attachment with the shift that you're going to be working with or where you're based. Come back and you finish off. Then you have a nice big graduation and then you're sent on your way.
So you reeled off a lot of different things you got to do during the training. Out of all those things, which ones did you enjoy the most and why?
I enjoyed the sort of fitness aspect of it because I was good at it, and I was sort of like, well, I was the fittest there.
So what? Take us through it. What on a fitness day? What would you have to do?
Right, so there's a thing called a bleep test, which they still do. So it's basically 2 marks. People that do sports will know about it. You've got your 2 markers. I can't remember. I think it's like 30 metres apart, and you have to run between the 2. But
Like sprinting,
but
is
it's
it?
timed. So it starts off really slow, and then it gets faster and faster and faster. And then depending what level you get up to, indicates sort of your fitness. So like at the time, I'd never get anywhere near it now. I was level 13, which is very sort of quite, what's the word? Elite athlete fitness, sort of.
Whip it level.
Yeah.
And what out of those things that you reeled off, which ones were the ones that you didn't like for any reasons?
I didn't like the law tests.
Law.
The law tests, because I'm not very good at remembering stuff, and it's so complex. Even though, we didn't go into, again, this is the thing, you got a general knowledge of the law, because when you start looking at stuff, that's why when you join the police, say, for example, you go onto traffic, it's another whole ball game of what you need to know where for traffic law. So you're going into communities, sort of law and disorder, general crimes, shoplifting, criminal damage, domestic, those sort of things. But like remembering it, it's, and like having to, so you have, what you do is, well, you'd have scenarios, play role. So you'd get other people coming in doing the play role, and you'd have, working out, are they breaking the law or not? Weighing up the situation, and then how do you respond?
So do they teach you arrest protocol?
Yeah.
What is the arrest protocol that you were taught?
God, you go in there. The arrest protocol, I would say, at the time, it is you go in with an open mind, because obviously you don't know the backgrounds to people. You assess the situation. Now, this is how I felt it was at the time. It may be very different now. You go in, and if you can arrest somebody, you do.
Based on what?
So you're going in, that sounds really bad, doesn't it? But sort of at the time, when a way to assess a police officer and their performance was very much related to your arrest rates. And so arrest rates indicated that you were doing a good job.
Therein lies a problem we're going to address later on, I imagine.
But, I would say that's changed. I'm not too sure how much. So, and obviously, it wasn't written down anywhere, but certain arrests would give you more brownie points than other arrests.
Drug ones.
Drug ones in particular, where there was violence involved, robberies and such. Like twocking was big in the 90s, taken without owner's consent car. Theft from cars was really, the radios used to be able to pull out, ram raids. So, it's quite embarrassing to say that, because, I'm not proud of that. But that was the mentality that I learned when I went into the police. And again, people can forget that actually the success of the police in your communities is an absence of crime. It's not the detection of it. So there lies the problem that going on arrest rates, detecting all this crime, isn't actually a good thing.
So how old were you when you finished your training, and what was your confidence in your career like?
Oh, so I was 23 when I finished my training. Again, now you have like 2 years probation. So you finish your training, you get through that, you get the tick, and you go onto your shift and go forth.
So you said you get 2 years of probation. What does that mean?
So for 2 years you are assessed, and at the end of that 2 years is sort of like you can officially do the job.
So what are you doing that they are assessing for that 2 years?
So your performance, so arrests, looking at things like, you know, your paperwork's done, what have you created, what difference have you made into the community, how you fit into the shift, teamwork, working with other people. It's just basically like a work review.
Are you like partnered up with senior people during your probation period?
Yes, so what you get is an officer. I actually got an officer that hadn't had the training, but because of staffing, whatever. So a police officer can opt to do probation training. So they'll go and do that. And then on the shift, when a newbie like me comes along, they'll be partnered up, and their job will be to show you the ropes, the area, and how you do other paperwork that you haven't done in your basic training and stuff, and how to do the job. So again, it's really important who you get, and that can make a difference to how your probation goes as well.
So Maggie Oliver, we interviewed her here, and she was talking about sexism back then. Were you experiencing anything?
The day.
Were you experiencing anything like that?
Oh yeah. Again, you know what it is? It's like, hashtag fucking hell hindsight. That I was quite I was naive in lots of ways. So like one of those, and I never thought about it until I look back on it and go, I put up with that. But, again, remembering sort of at the time there was a big sort of push on getting more women into the police force and diversity, ethnic minority groups being represented. There wasn't a huge amount of females. So when I joined, although they disbanded with it, I think about in the first year I was there, we used to wear a skirt to court, which I was like, I can't fucking believe this. This is ridiculous. Why do we have to wear a skirt? But we had to. And then they disbanded it anyway. So that's one aspect that they did get rid of. So I got called in, all the probationers, they get called into the superintendent's office. And the superintendent, Arnold, a great guy, but he was like, oh yeah, so welcome to Biker. I was in Biker and Walker. Welcome to the shift, Are you fit? Yeah, I run. Great. Can you do push-ups? Yeah. Give us 10. And I was like, okay. And I was like, that's fine. And I didn't think about it. I was like, fine, I can do that. And then I was just like, afterwards I'm thinking, would he have asked a bloke to do that? So I did 10 push-ups in his office, got a pat on the back, good lass, and sent on my way. And then there's always the sexist remarks in the what's it called? Basically in the patrol room where you'd meet with your shift and other shifts, and other male members would make comments, and then nights out you sort of had to be aware, shall we say.
Did you ever find you had to put someone in the place?
I never did, because I just didn't have that confidence in me. I look back now and like, oh my God, that's I didn't know. Now I'm much more aware and call myself a feminist. And some of the things that happened and went on, I would hope to say would never ever happen today. But who knows? It was a sexist environment, and as a female, you sort of basically had to be one of the lads and man up, or you were ostracised. And actually, I had quite a lot of difficulty with some of the female police officers, because you're another female. They see, in my experience, they see me as a threat, and would challenge me, and I'd have to be really careful around them.
During your probationary period, other than what you've just described, what were the biggest challenges for you?
Night shift.
Night shift?
Night shift. No, that's light. It's not night shift. Early mornings.
What's that one? What hours?
So it was 6 a.m. to 2 o'clock in the afternoon. They changed them, but that was especially if I'd been out the night before. on a weekend, which is
Yeah.
like, I found it really difficult not to go out.
So, are you encountering violence, corpses, horrific scenes during these probationary years, or is that later on? Because most of the cops we've interviewed have, I think pretty much all of them have encountered those things.
Yeah, yeah, all of those things. I think you sort of accumulate them, and I know sometimes I think, oh, am I really insensitive? Because, I mean, as well, this was before I had kids, so I think maybe it'd be very different now. Sort of, I desensitized myself to it. You know, numerous sudden deaths that you'd have to go to, and there's a dead body, and go through the protocol of that. It was just a body. I think one of the hardest ones was a young girl who was playing chicken on a motorway and got hit. That was probably the hardest one.
Oh, how old was she?
She was about 12, 13,
What the
12.
hell? She got on the motorway.
It's like a dual carriageway that goes through the centre of Newcastle. And she didn't survive. I had to go to the hospital with her and stay in intensive care and stay with the mother. And again, you know, and actually thinking back at that age, sort of, it transpired that she had mental health issues, the girl at 12. And, you know, again, many years ago, it wasn't a huge thing talked about. You know, sort of a risk taker as well. And she was playing chicken, but like, she didn't care, playing chicken. I mean, it's awful.
So what happened? Did like a call come in? There's a girl on the road.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. Traffic attended, and basically she was on the road, and actually it was if I remember rightly, it was actually a doctor that had hit her. You know, and it wasn't his fault.
Was she gone right away?
No, she got into intensive care in the hospital and died in hospital.
So have you then got to like, you know, stand there with the mum and, you know, is there a protocol for dealing with the bereaved?
Yeah, well, I seen that at that time, I hadn't had like any bereavement training, but I was then found that I was with this woman who was the mother. It was a bit of a complicated background because she wasn't actually living with the mother, and I can't remember who else, but sort of I think she might have even been foster care, something like that. It wasn't as straightforward, so it was quite difficult to find the mum. And then we found the mum, and I mean, I got through it and sat with her and comforted her. I mean, but like, you know, how do you comfort someone that's just found out their kid's been killed? Whatever the relationship is with them. But I manage sort of in those situations. I don't know, I sort of like put on a role, I pretend to be somebody, and I can do that. I sort of disjoint from myself.
It's a
separate.
protection mechanism, isn't it?
Yeah,
You're internalising it.
Mm.
Yeah. So some of the other cops have said they had to go like watch autopsies and go to the morgue. Did you have to do all that stuff?
Yeah, I did. I find that really interesting.
Do you?
I'm a bit gruesome as well, actually.
Do you watch that show, Autopsy?
Yeah, well, I'm like one of those ones, if I have an operation, I'd much rather see them do it. You know. So yeah,
What? Go on, take us through that then. Going to watch an autopsy.
So I don't know if they do it now. It was like it was part of your probation that you had to go and see the whole process through of what happened.
Yeah.
And again, a really interesting one. God, I sound really grim, but it was actually a woman that had thrown herself off the Tyne Bridge.
Bloody hell!
I know. Yeah. Yeah. There are some happy people in Newcastle, honestly. There are. And again, there was sort of a history of mental issues around it. Anyway, so I go to, and I think they wanted me to go to that one as well because I was sort of the new female on the shift, sort of like, I don't know, I might faint or something or whatever. But I found it incredibly interesting because actually what they found was the woman had 2 wombs. And so she didn't know that, or before whatever, it was discovered in the autopsy, and potentially that was why she had a lot of mental health issues and problems to do with hormones and imbalances in the body.
2 wombs.
Yeah.
Wow. That had been undiagnosed.
Yeah.
That's a shame, isn't it?
But I mean, I found that really interesting. I mean, awful. It was a suicide.
Yeah.
But yeah.
So what happens at the autopsy then? Do you have to have like smelling salts and you have to watch certain...
No, well, it depends what you like. You literally went in with a gown, your masks on, and the doctor who was doing the autopsy basically talked you through it, and there's the cutting open tooth. In sudden deaths, it's unless there's a history of illness. So, for example, somebody that's maybe in palliative care at home that is dying from cancer dies, they generally doesn't necessarily have to be an autopsy because it was a predicted death, if you know what I mean.
Yeah.
Whereas sudden deaths, they find the cause so they can record it. So it's sort of, they cut them open, pull out the lungs, look at the lungs, the heart, the other organs, weigh them, seeing if they're...
And did that make you queasy at all?
No, I like that sort of stuff. But I am a farmer's daughter as well, so, I'm used to...
Farmyard accidents and animal stuff.
Animals giving
Cows,
birth.
Yeah. Did watching a body get sawed open make you question your mortality? No.
That makes me sound really hard, no? I question my mortality more now than I did then.
Yeah.
I don't know, it's that youth that...
Yeah, you're invincible.
I don't think...
not
got
that invincible spirit,
but sort of like,
it
won't... Well, that classic line, what happened to me?
Yeah. Wow, okay then. You come out of your probationary period, and then do you get assigned to a certain task or role? Or
Yeah, so, you find out after the 10 weeks, because you have a break, and you go to the shift that you're assigned. So I got assigned the Newcastle East area, which is Biker and Walker, and the police station there, which is not there anymore. In Biker, I was on A relief, which was the shifts. So there's like A relief, B relief, C relief, D relief. And that's sort of what was rotated, that covered 24/7 policing in the Newcastle East area. And I was assigned A relief. So I then was assigned to my probation trainer, and you just go around with him for, I think it was about 5 weeks. Then you went back, finished off 5 weeks, and then you were basically let out into the world with your probation to be a police officer.
So how much of it was office work and how much was out in the field?
To start with, it was more... Well, it varied. I mean, God, paperwork was always a pain in the arse. I don't know whether it's any easier now being on computers and all the stuff that you have now. Because at the time, it was literally, you had like a drawer, really thin drawers, which were all the correct sheets and stuff, and you'd have to pull them all out, write them all out, go on the computer, do the PNC checks, criminal records, all the rest of it, when you were creating a file. So this was a file you'd create that was going to go to court when you've arrested somebody and they've been charged and they're going to go to court. So obviously that depends when you're out, how many people you arrest, how often you arrest, and the paperwork accordingly. So most of the shifts you were out and about, unless you got an arrest, then depending on what that arrest was, you brought them back to the police station, processed them with the custody sergeant, where that meant you had to go out and get more information, do some more investigative work, or they needed to be kept in the cell overnight, or, again, depending on what you'd arrested for. So for example, shoplifting's quite straightforward. You arrest them, you take them to the custody, you do a quick interview, they admit to shoplifting. Now, you know, depending on the record, their previous, they'd either sort of get a fine and told off, or they'd be bailed to come to court when they go to magistrate's court.
So when you say you're out and about then, did you have to just walk, the old beat cart walking through the neighbourhood? Are you in a patrol car? Are you just getting call outs to certain people, the public, responding to what the public are calling in? Or is it a combination of all of them?
It was a combination of both that we had. Foot patrol.
Foot patrol.
Can be a lonely place.
Is foot patrol solo, or are you with someone always?
Well, again, I remember I got into trouble. I can't remember what I got into trouble for now. I'm trying to think if I remember. And my punishment was to do foot patrol on my own. So I don't quite work out. Again, I don't think it would happen now. So, yeah, so like on a late shift, which is 2 till 10, out in Bike and Walker on foot.
Is that a dodgy neighbourhood?
It's really mixed. There's some very... between the east and west of Newcastle, west is probably has a larger area of more socially deprived, I'll say, estates. And Walker is slightly worse than Biker. But it also covered Heaton, which is sort of now becoming quite a middle class area to live. But it has its very rough patches, yeah.
So you're out on this punishment walk.
Yeah. It's like the walk of shame.
What challenges arose on that day?
Do you know what to do?
What to do?
Like, right, I've got to and hope that you might find somebody to arrest, because at least you can go back to the police station and get warm and like I said, I don't know whether I don't think they would let you patrol on your own now. I would like to say they wouldn't, but I don't know. So that would be sort of walking around the area, basically doing checks on car registrations, anything. You got to know where certain people lived, what activities were going on, so you could go around, check vehicles, speak to drivers if they're parked, or, and there were shops around, so you just get called in for shoplifters and stuff, and take information down off people. Chat, I suppose really what I should have been doing is chatting to the community and getting to know the public that I serve, which I did actually do. I did do that as well. But that's sort of I did do that. I did do that because I was looking for people to arrest, but I sort of was. But, speaking to the public, because again, there's that thing, people felt more comfortable seeing police officers walking around.
What equipment did you have on you, or weapons?
Oh, so at the time I had, I had my stab-proof vest on, my utility belt with my quick cuffs, pepper spray, and retractable truncheon.
Did you have to use
radios.
Did you have to use the spray in the early years?
Yeah, I've used it a couple of times.
What was the circumstances you had to use it the first time?
The one that comes to mind is down in Walker. There was this pub called the Scrog, which was
Scrog.
I know, yeah, quite well renowned, and it was actually a guy, basically drunk in disorder, but he was off his head, and I got into a wrestling match with him. And
were you on your own?
No, I was actually with another guy, which was actually really quite lucky, because the guy that I was with was quite a big guy. So I sort of got into a struggle with him, and I got flung somewhere, so I got my pepper spray out. My person that I was with, he managed to pin him down, and I could spray him.
Did that disable the person?
Not that much,
Not
actually.
that
Not
much.
as much as I thought it was going to.
Yeah, he was still resistant.
Yeah.
Because if you're a civilian in this country, are you allowed to have like a pepper spray keyring or anything like that? I know you can in America.
I don't know whether you are. I don't think you are.
You're not?
I don't think so. Or I'm not too sure, because like I say, obviously I know the big thing, isn't it, about, women walking on their own and what they can have to sort of protect themselves. I'm not sure whether... I know you can buy it.
Because you've got the alarm ones,
You've got the alarm ones, but the actual...
Yeah.
I don't actually think it is legal for
Do you
you
think
to...
the pepper spray keyrings are possibly illegal?
Yeah.
So the second time you had to use pepper spray, what was that?
I'm trying to think where that... Again, it was another disorder. and I'm trying to think what the situation was. It was a Saturday night, and again, it was a group of males, and a fight had kicked off outside a pub.
Drunks again.
And sort of
alcohol.
Yeah, and other substances, and but it was like saying, I'd say all the ones where there was a massive kicking off, and like saying that again, used the pepper spray. It was a big fight, and quite a few of the patrol cars turned up. It was always alcohol.
What was the biggest melee you attended?
Sort of like the biggest sort of fight.
Yeah.
It was probably it was a wedding.
A wedding?
A wedding at, it's not there now, it's a social club that was at the top of the, I can't remember the name, like Shields Road. And there's a social club, and basically it was a wedding that kicked off big style, and our police cells ended up being full of all the wedding guests, and then some taken to the city centre.
Do you know what had started that?
I can't remember what started. Again, alcohol, a load of families not getting on, and it just went mental.
Wow. Well, the bride and groom didn't end up in the cells, did they?
No, the bride didn't. But I don't know. No, but I think everybody else did.
Yeah.
And yeah.
Wow. Did you ever feel like this situation is particularly dangerous in those early years? You felt at risk. Where's my backup? That kind of thing.
I mean, there was a few times, and again, because sometimes just because of staffing, like on night shift, in a patrol car on your own, and so a few disturbances, as in potential burglaries, or a person's been seen acting suspiciously in the area. So those, I don't like the dark. So, when you're going into a house, again, I just did it, trying to see if there's an intruder, knowing that there's actually only potentially 4 other people on somewhere else in the area that might be on a job as well. So if something does happen, I'm not sure when a response will get.
Is there a button you have, or do you have to do a radio call? If there's
a
radio call. Gotcha. So there's somebody in the area, a strange individual in an area. Like, what do you do? Just go knocking door to door? Have you seen this person, or how do you try and track that person?
Well, it depends how the call comes in. So burglaries were pretty common. When you got intelligence round of, like on like sheds particularly were broken into to get gardening equipment and stuff like that. I don't think that's particularly uncommon. When there's sort of a spate of that going on, you get a call saying, I think I've got an intruder in my garden. So you get if they had a description, you could look out for that. But then you're basically going in potentially blind into that situation to see, is the intruder still there? Have they committed a crime? And then speak to the person that's rang that call in.
Did anyone pull weapons on you?
No, I didn't actually.
That's lucky, isn't it?
That's really lucky.
Yeah.
And I think that is, more luck than anything else. And it wasn't that there wasn't weapons there. It's just that they didn't get that opportunity to use them.
Were you involved in any high-profile cases?
No, not really. No, it's quite boring, really. I did more at the time. They were when I went into like the CID and operations, and then doing undercover work, because they were sort of a bigger picture. But no, I think I managed to, I like I say, I got an award because I got a guy who'd committed robberies in the area, and I managed to run after him, drag him down and arrest him. Yeah, he had a knife on him, but again, like saying, he didn't get an opportunity to use it, but he did have a knife on him. But that was quite, it was. I got a pat on the back for it.
Yeah. So you've really enabled people to understand you and what led to you joining the police and your first years in the police now. So we're going to move over then to the drug stuff. And does that start with you joining the crime team, and which is attached to the CID? Do you want to explain what the CID is as well?
Crime Investigation Department. So they were seen as the cool guys.
Would that be like the equivalent to the FBI in America? Or?
No, because it's not that they have any more powers than a uniformed police officer. It's just that they were their time in investigation was sort of, I'd say, like what the public would perceive as real crimes. So you're talking about burglaries by one or two people that do a load of them, robberies, drugs, rapes, violent crimes. So and they weren't in uniform. It's a bit like Starsky and Hutch sort of thing, and it was sort of like, again, like you're saying, they were exactly the same as police officers. It's just they were in the CID, they didn't have to wear a uniform, and they did like the really interesting stuff.
So if sexual assaults were part of that, then did you have to have special training to deal with and help victims of sexual assaults?
Yeah, I did rape training.
Rape training, it's called, okay.
So basically on how to collate all the evidence from when you've taken a victim to the hospital with the doctor, and then also how to get as much information, statement from them after the event as well, and sort of take them through that process.
Because you hear survivors of abuse sometimes complaining that it's so intrusive what they have to go through.
Oh yeah,
they don't, it's like compounding the suffering that they've just gone through in the first place.
It is very intrusive and unpleasant and undignified. One of the worst crimes has been committed against, in what I dealt with females. It's a horrific process to go through, to take them through the statement as well. And the thing that I found really frustrating was that, because obviously we want people to come forward when this has happened to them and get the perpetrators. But because of the way just the law and the criminal justice system is set up, that I could have that, I could deal with that with the victim, take them through that process, get all the information, and we have a person arrested for that. That might not go to Crown Court for maybe 18 months, 2 years. And so when people say, come forward, yeah, you should always report it. But if that person wants to move on with their life or try and move on, that is, how can you do that? Well, you can, but you have to be a really resilient, what's the word? I don't know, just a resilient person to be able to do that. Because otherwise it's hanging over your head until you get to court. And unfortunately, the detection rates and getting a sentence are really, really poor. They're appalling.
So you think because women know that they're going to have to go through this intrusive process, and then the conviction rates are so low, perhaps many of them don't even get that far, or it's a deterrent
Yeah.
to report it. Mm-hmm. Yeah.
And I think, and the things, well, the ones that I dealt with, I had a couple that withdrew because of the long, drawn-out process that they withdrew.
Yeah. Wow.
And I, you know what, to be honest, I don't blame them, because also I've sat through the whole procedure, gone to court where I believe the guy did it, and I believe the woman, and you go to court and he gets off with it.
Yeah. I'm sure attitudes are changing now, but you hear cases of judges, oh, you were wearing a mini skirt and all that kind of attitude.
Yeah, and
was that quite common back then?
That happened,
Yeah.
very much, yeah.
And how do you feel about that then? And
I wish I knew what I know now then, because I'm not saying that I'd be able to change that, but just to stand up more for them.
Yeah.
When you have people saying that, and you were drunk, you were drunk, you were wearing a miniskirt. If anyone goes to Newcastle on a night out, we're renowned for skinny tops and miniskirts, and we love to go out and we love to party. That doesn't give you the right to. Oh, so they're asking for it.
Yeah, it's quite sickening, isn't it? Did you have to deal with sexual crimes against kids?
I did an attachment with the Child Protection Unit, which was based in Byker as well. So I did. I can't remember how long the attachment was. It's not particularly long, like a month. So in that time, I went because one of the things you got the opportunity to sort of apply for attachments with places in case that was where you decided you want to specialise or be in, an interest in and whatever. And also as a female, for obvious reasons, not necessarily, they needed us to be trained in like saying sexual assaults and also interviewing children. And so I did an attachment with the Child Protection Unit. And again, that was one of the reasons I actually didn't go back into the police force, because like I said, I took a career break because I'd had my first child, and knowing what I knew, I just thought I wouldn't be able to do it. I couldn't do the job anymore.
And what did you learn?
So, how many paedophiles are out living in areas that they shouldn't be living in, undetected or known about, that child abuse, sexual or through violence, whilst it happens in all levels of society, so I talk about the British, that you've got your middle, your upper class, and your working class. We're a society of classes. It happens in all classes, but the people with money generally don't get to court and don't get convicted.
Look at Epstein's first sweetheart deal. That reflects that, doesn't it?
Yeah.
And all the people in high society who continued to associate with him after that as well. Like, it didn't even matter. Mm-hmm. That's outrageous. So you said you were with the CPU then.
CID.
I'm sorry, Child Protection Unit.
Oh, sorry, Child Protection Unit. Yeah, I'm sorry you're using all the acronyms. Get you.
What cases did you investigate or were involved in with that unit?
So, I because I was just there for an attachment, I didn't sort of like get into the details and involved, because obviously they're highly sensitive, and also I hadn't done my interview training for children, so you could sit in on the interviews if that was allowed. So it was very sensitive, and obviously the nature of it with children, you had to be really careful. But it's just, I mean, I think that, that is one thing that's just so depressing of the amount that goes on within society that we don't know about. And
so it seems like you took everything in your stride up until now. We've got you rolling around wrestling drunks in bars. We've got you unfazed by postmortems. But this, going out with this, whatever you did with this unit's really affected you?
Yeah.
Did they are they showing you things or training you to do things? Or what's the information you absorb into?
It's just, with files and stuff that you're allowed access to when you're seeing pictures of, really young kids with bruises, marks, cigarette burns, and then descriptions of what an adult, a person that was supposed to be looking after them or in their care, what they did to them and in sexual nature. It's just another level of, I don't know, depravity. Is that really too strong a word? It's
that's
as adults we do stuff to each other, and not saying it's right or wrong, but it's sort of like, you're old enough to make your own mind up. Choices I've made, I was an adult, I take responsibility for those.
Yeah.
But when it's children, it just, I don't know, it's just one of those things that just makes me... And I think that's getting better. It's like a bit off pieced a bit. It's coming... I think now what I know now in recovery and stuff, to go back to that, of what trauma can do to children and how that impacts them detrimentally for the rest of their life. It just fills me full of, sadness, because it's sort of like, the people that I'm dealing with, unfortunately, are from very socially deprived areas, high unemployment, areas of no hope, and then victims of some sort of child abuse, some sort of trauma. These aren't going to be people that are going to be getting intense therapy, being able to see counsellors, wraparound support to become robust for the future. They're broken and they'll remain broken.
And it's drugs to self-medicate, and then criminality to finance the drug, and then prison. In and out of prison, then,
and that's another thing that became really clear to me, of that areas of high unemployment, socially deprived, trauma, dysfunction. I'll say dysfunctional families. What is a dysfunctional family? But broken families, trauma, probably expelled from school, get into crime. Take illicit drugs, change the way they feel, or they get into that circle. They then get locked up due to crime, to get drugs, and it continues. They get then released from prison that's done nothing but either pick up a different habit or continue their habit while they're in there. They get kicked back out into the same environment. What do you think is going to happen?
And then there's all the victims of their crimes that society could have been protected from if they'd been given the tools to deal with the trauma and the care. And you listed some of those tools, psychotherapy, I think you said, and other things. And that's a common thing on this channel we talk about, is these kids aren't given the tools to deal with it. The predators aren't getting removed from them and given long sentences. And they're getting short sentences, and this, the kids, even sometimes they get moved from a family into a care home, and in the care homes, we've had guests on who were put in care homes, and then they were pimped out by the owners of the care homes. Mm-hmm. So, but all right, we'll get to more of the politics. Let's keep going with your personal story. So, targeting drug dealers, when did that begin?
So that began in, the good old 90s. The start of the rave scenes. Again, it was like, it doesn't happen now. Ram raids were really big.
What's that mean?
When you get a stolen car and you'd ram it through a window of a shop and then you'd grab everything.
Oh, wow.
You know, they would be, and like I said, the twocking, the taking without owner's consent. They were sort of the big things. But then obviously in the 90s, we see him coming out, drugs, you know, becoming more and more visible.
It's like an avalanche of ecstasy, wasn't it?
Yeah. And obviously the rave scene was like, that's what it was all about. And so what developed sort of in the stages that we're at was, so you had the CID, and then there was sort of, we ran basically like an operations unit beside that. Now what that meant is we sort of sat around, got some intelligence in from the area. So from, say, CID, they'd lock someone up, they'd give them a bit of information, we collate that, and then like, oh, right, okay, so this looks like we need to do a raid on this place because we've said from such and such and such, the stolen goods are there, or we've heard from this person, he's bought some drugs from this place, this guy's bought some drugs from this place, that looks like that's going to be the dealer's place. And so then we'd collate it, put operations together, like the who, what, where, go to the magistrates, get a warrant so we can kick the door in, always go really early in the morning, kick the door in, get the stolen goods or get the drugs. And it, you know, was all seen as a big success when it all went well. But it was that build up of, at that time as well, anything to do with drugs was a big star. It was a big bonus, big kudos, big pats on the back.
The system incentivising it.
Mm-hmm.
Take us through the first time you were on a team that kicked the door in. What was the preparation like? What was the intel?
Oh God, the intel, trying to remember. I mean, the intel was quite similar, really. So what you'd get is to get intel, so to get informants, you could do that various ways. So either in uniform, you arrested someone, you could sort of befriend them, chat to them. And at the time, there's this big thing called TICs, which is called taken into consideration. So basically, somebody that you'd arrested that you knew was going to go straight to court, so you had, because of his record, kept in overnight. You'd have all these crimes that had happened in the area. And if that person said, yeah, that was me, so we could tick the crimes as detected, it would be taken into consideration, which meant at court the judge would be more lenient on them. But then also what we could do is, if they gave us some information that led to an arrest or to finding X, Y, or Z, that again would be taken into consideration. Or you could take them on as an informant, which at the time meant that they could get money from the police service for various levels of information. So you'd get that by, you go out into the area, which again, actually that's another thing on foot you can do, is you're talking to people and you can, it's not very nice really, because actually you don't want to be the best mate, but you want information from them. So you're sort of like, you know, I'll help you if you help me. And then quite often in the police cells, you'd see certain people in, knew that they're connected with whatever, you could go and talk to them and say, got anything for us? Help you out if you want. And then with all that information, and then from various other sources, you know, remembering that there's 4 other shifts and other people out there and information coming in, we'd collate these operations, put them together, and again, like you're saying, execute them. Hopefully with a result, but it didn't always.
So go on, your first ever one, the morning of. What's it like? Are you like psyching yourselves up? You know, kicking doors in. There could be weapons in there. Kind of like, it's an unknown, isn't it? What's beyond that door, really? Mm-hmm. That's got to take, you know, some. You got to be like, what's your adrenaline like going in?
Depending on the information. So, you know, the ones where it was stolen goods was sort of like pretty. I mean, obviously, the people that were there, potentially they could have had, you know, weapons, and most likely did. But because it was sort of hi-fis and disc players at the time and car radios and stuff like that. It was just sort of pretty mundane, sort of like, let's go and kick the door down, seize the goods, and then anybody on the premises that was there would be arrested for handling stolen goods.
How do you approach the property?
So normally, oh God, I'm trying to remember what we did. So there was about 4 or 5 of us on the team, so depending who was on and the size of it, you'd obviously let uniform know that was going to happen in the morning. So they'd be sort of around the area. And then there'd be sort of 2 or 3 of you that would go in. Someone would decide they're going to use the enforcer. So the enforcer is the sort of the big red hammer that you see when you're swinging it at the door.
Did you have a go at that?
Yeah.
What was that like?
I was shit because I just knocked in one of those panels, and I ended up just, and because obviously you'd done the bang, I ended up just having to climb through, because I was small, I ended up, climbed through the gap that I'd made, and then opened the door from the other side and then went in. Yeah, I wasn't very good at that.
What was the hairiest raid?
Hairiest?
Yeah.
I think, I don't know whether it's hairiest. I think that one of the ones that I found, well, yeah, probably there was one that we did, and it was to do with drugs, and it was to do with this guy who, I can't remember how I got the information. So it was this guy, he lived with a partner, and there was 2 young kids. I mean, it's hideous when I look back. Hideous, 2 kids. He had 2 dogs, because obviously dogs were always a pain in the ass for police officers. And it was good information from a source that he had, I think, something like half a kilo of coke. And so it was quite a big thing because he wasn't like, he wasn't a kingpin or anything, but, that was quite a large amount for a person to have. And he sort of came around from nowhere. It's like, right, okay. So, but with that, there was the known associates, sort of like, you're talking guns, weapons, that sort of violent, people that kidnapped people and shot their kneecaps sort of thing. So that was probably the one that made me the most nervous, because you didn't know whether any of them were going to be in the house or whatever. But actually, when we got there was only him and his partner and the 2 young kids. But
no dogs.
No, and there was one dog. There was one dog that I remember, but we then had the police dogs as well. Yeah.
How does that work? You said you have the police dogs. Did the police dogs intimidate the dog?
Well, it's just like a man up between the dogs. No, the dog was actually all right.
Yeah.
It wasn't like a big one that came for your ankle, so that was okay. So we had the police dogs, the sniffer dogs.
Yeah. When you know there's a dog, the old strategy of taking something to feed it.
No. Again,
No.
I don't know whether it's like my farmer's background, sort of like I'm okay with animals.
Okay.
I wasn't scared of dogs or anything. It doesn't mean I'm a flipping dog whisperer or anything like that. Like it could have bit me, whatever, as I was kicking it. But they didn't faze me too much. But the thing that was annoying about it is we couldn't find the drugs. And so that's, we had the drugs dogs brought in everywhere, looking everywhere, and he was swear down on his kids' lives. He didn't have it. It wasn't him. And this information was good, and we searched everywhere. And then for some reason we went back out into the garden, and the dogs picked something up, and we found it under sort of grass turf in a drain pipe. So it was like, oh, yes, because it was, when you go into those, there was 2 young kids there. You had the partner screaming, the 2 young kids upset, the guy swearing down that he hasn't got any drugs, don't know what you're talking about, whatever. And we're desperate to get a result. And we've done that where we haven't got a result. I do look back on that and I feel, that's a traumatic experience for those kids. You know, maybe am I being too oversensitive about what I did or whatever, but it's like that's the reality of drugs operations and the effort that's put in to finding them. And again, I remember it because the guy didn't give a shit about being locked up. You know, like he had previously, he was going straight down for maybe 4-6 years or whatever. What he was worried about was how his wife was going to live and how they were going to pay the money back for the drugs that were seized, because that debt was now his.
So, and the trauma on the kids, it's almost state-sanctioned child abuse, isn't it? Like,
Yeah.
yeah. All right, what is level 1 training for the drug squad?
So, again, I don't know whether the levels have changed now. I think it's predominantly, it was level 1 and level 2 buying. And I never did level 2. I did level 1 buying. Level 2 is basically the next stage up for when you would go somewhere and stay overnight, or maybe a week or a month, depending on the level of undercover work you need to do. So level 1 was, it was a relatively new course that was brought out in a reaction to the drug scene, how drugs were viewed in the media and public, that drugs were bad, and we needed to get all the people that dealt off the streets and those using needed to see the error of their ways, if you like. So the drug squad was set up. I mean, it'd been going a while, but this was like new techniques that were coming in. It's basically to keep up with the organised crime gangs and how they got drugs into the areas that we worked. And so it was a week's training at headquarters with a group of other people. So you had to do an interview to see if you were suitable and be taken on. And I did that, and then I can't remember, I think there's 12 of us altogether, something like that did a week's training about buying drugs. And then we were like on the list of having the training, and then we could then potentially get called in to do jobs.
Did you already have a bit of that information prior to the training?
Yeah, I would have had a little bit of information. Like at the time, my drug use was very limited, really, to every now and then. And I had other people that I worked with that I knew used illegal drugs. Totally contradictory, but it was like, we got away with it.
And what was that, like rave drugs?
Yeah, for me.
Ecstasy.
Yeah, and speed was massive.
Speed,
then.
yeah, raps of Billy Whiz.
Yeah.
So you went into the nightclubs then undercover. What was that like?
I enjoyed it. I enjoyed the time. I didn't do a huge amount. Like you've interviewed Neil Woods, who sort of done months and months and months and months. The ones that I did were a lot shorter time, and I did a lot of cold calling ones as well. But the because I loved the dance scene and I loved the club scene, and like when I used to go out, I looked completely different to a person than I did in uniform. Like people just didn't recognise me when I went out, so that was an advantage. And I found it really intriguing and interesting. That world just really interested me, and I could be someone completely different because I had to be, and pretend to be somebody different, which I was good at doing. So I enjoyed it, and I know there's lots of people that have done it that have PTSD from it. That it's very I don't know whether Neil talked about it and other people. It's hard work, and then obviously the people that you were locking up, you look back on that, and that's sort of where my remorse and like, what the hell did we think we were doing, comes in.
All right, I'll give you a scenario then. I'll give you, from my own experience, like a club in Manchester, say in the early days, like the Thunderdome. So you go in the club and there's just people like stood around the walls. There's loads of people dancing. There's like a corner with the Salford skinheads, you know, and you can see people going and coming to and fro, picking up pills. Few perhaps random other people around the room you suspect are peddling pills. You've entered the premises. You've taken all that in. What's your next move?
To find the people that are dealing the drugs.
And how would you do it?
So it's a bit like that. It's like, you know, when you're in that scene, you sort of get an idea of who's most likely going to be the person that's going to have the gear on them, or at least the person that you notice that, you know, there's quite a few people going up and they're saying hello to, but, you know, very quickly and then going away, or that person's going away and then coming back, and then other people are coming to them. So and then sometimes, you know, you'd have information and you'd have photographs, so you could sort of like go, all right, that's that person. So if I had a photograph and you could identify the person, that was slightly easier, because you didn't have to like then start looking around, right, who is it? Who? Because also you had to be careful, because it's like you didn't want to go straight to like the, you know, like saying the Salford crew in the corner. It's like, you know not to do that. You work your way up, even if you sort of an average clubber and you want to get onto that table because that's the cool table. You know, you have to do it in certain unless you really like got some balls and you can just go straight up and do it. So because I was sort of aware of that scene, it didn't take very long to either work out who it was that was dealing at the different points, or who to ask who they got theirs from. And that was easy to go to, because if you didn't, nothing was too obvious, you just ask somebody like, you know, where's the, you know, where's the party at in this place then? You know, have you got anything?
All right, before you reach that point then, from what you described, my interpretation is the strategy is to try and blend in first.
Yeah.
So does that mean you get up and dance, you jump on a speaker, you drop an ecstasy pill? How do you blend in?
Well, no, because you weren't allowed to take illicit drugs unless it was, you know, life-threatening situation. You know, you weren't supposed to just, you know, take drugs for it. That's the line that I know in reality that is different. I actually didn't take illicit drugs when I was doing that work on that night, sort of thing, if you know what I mean. The thing is though, we all before we did this, we'd go for like you'd have to have like what's the word I'm looking for? Like a meet about it before we'd go into the club. So we'd meet some pub somewhere, have a few drinks, you know, get the nice warm fuzzy feeling.
Oh, so you were on alcohol then at least?
Yes,
okay.
You could. Although again, you had to be really careful of not getting too pissed, because you're supposed to be gathering evidence and remembering. And again, that didn't always work out. So you go that, and any information that you got, you know, so if you did get a photograph or whatever, you could then target the person, and you'd have a few drinks, and then we'd sort of, you know, you had a little bit of time to psych yourself up. So like, or like play some music. So like we used to play Faithless, I Can't Get No Sleep. It was like our...
Can't get no sleep.
That was like our, before we went in, anthem, if you like. Yeah.
Stood the test of time, that one. It's had various remixes.
Yeah. And then, like saying, go in and see what you could get. You know, it really was like, okay, go in and see what you can get. But obviously, you know, the more ecstasy or like cocaine. So, based on the classes, class A drugs is what they were interested in because that looked better, meant that the persons involved would get more time.
Stats.
Stats.
Are you going in solo, or does the team go in together?
Well,
are you hanging out together, or?
So, like say in a club that we did in Whitley Bay, there was there's 4 or 5 females involved in it, but so it'd be like a group of 3 and a group of 2, and we'd go in at different times, and have different basically work different parts of the club because it was quite it was a big club as well. So we'd go in at different times, and it's quite easy for 2 girls and 3 girls to meet in a club and start talking. So it didn't look suspicious, and also as well, it's sort of like I think females managed to do that a bit easier and better than men a lot of the time, and obviously the way it was that at the time, the people in the clubs selling the drugs were mostly male. So obviously, and as a female, it was a little bit easier to sweet talk them into giving you something when they didn't know who you were. Like, because again, it's that they have to be careful who they're selling to and they don't know you. So again, that is why we went in sort of week after week to build up information, and it was a better case as well, rather than just like, oh, it was only that night I was selling it. Rather than actually, it's actually over the past 3 months you've been.
Do the club owners have to know this operation is happening on their premises? And are you taking equipment in with you, hidden, like stuff?
No, I did do jobs when I was mic'd up.
Yeah.
But that was actually on the jobs when I was sent in on my own. Because then that would collaborate the evidence of him dealing me drugs.
And was that in a house?
Yeah.
You went on your own into a house?
Yeah.
Mic'd up?
Yeah, cool.
And what was it like in the house? Was it just one person there, or?
It varied. There was usually a couple of people. Sitting on the sofa playing on Xbox, or whatever the computer game was at the time. Wouldn't be Xbox, would it? Generally males. Although there was a couple that I did where it wasn't. It was just like, an everyday couple. In the afternoon, depending again on the information. Quite often it was information from people that were arrested and a taxi driver that was dropping people off at a certain address. And some of those came to nothing. It was just information that we got, but it did mean that I had to get a hidden microphone on me, go in, start a conversation, and get it round to him supplying me with some drugs.
So Neil Wood said that one of the things that crushed his idealism was going undercover with the low-level users to try and work his way up the chain and hearing their sad stories. And then when he thought, right, we're going to get the big guys here. But when all the arrests went down, predominantly the majority of the arrests were the low-level users that he'd been undercover with and hearing their sad stories, and it broke his heart. When the arrests went down in your cases, how would you categorise who was arrested?
So in the jobs that I did, it was more to do with, I'd say, low-level dealers. The ones in the clubs were probably a little bit above that, if you like. So I actually didn't have much to do with sort of like the street drugs and homeless people. But on reflection, like saying, when I look back at like who did I arrest really, and it ended up it was generally the people in the clubs were people that were unemployed and they could make money doing this, weren't bad people as such. It was the way that they made a living. Okay, yeah, they were involved in, a few of them were then involved in sort of like the higher organised crime gangs, sort of related to the big families in the area. But those who were sort of like arrested and convicted tended to be, like I said, those that were working in the clubs, it was the job. That's how they earned the money. The people, like when I called on people, they, again, were either unemployed and that's how they paid their bills, or it's how they supplemented their wages because the money that they earned wasn't enough to pay for whatever. I never knocked on a house that had its own drive and the Range Rovers are parked outside and gold taps. That didn't happen. I'm talking about calling on houses that had the windows boarded up with wood, that, didn't have any carpets, locks on the food stores sort of thing.
So quite desperate people then.
Yeah, people, I know that might be hard for some people to understand, but, like, you always have a choice, you don't have to do that. But, and again, this is the problem with the drugs market is there's so much money in it and people can earn a decent amount of money to live.
In the short term, before they pay the price.
In the short term, before, they're arrested and criminalised. But, again, it's that cycle that you go back to of... So, and, some of the people's where we did the operations, like I said, the windows are boarded up with wood or, no carpets. These are people that generally have a criminal record for other stuff, that have no qualifications, been kicked out of school, not particularly a healthy upbringing as a child, that doesn't have those options. I think it's from a place of privilege when people say they made bad choices or they don't have to do that. It's like, well, actually, what do you suggest that they do? Oh, and then I suppose people say, go to school, get qualifications, do this. It's like, yeah, but some of the people can't read or write or very poorly. How? And I think, for me, it's like people... I would like people to look upon, say, as victims. It may be a strong word for some people to take on, but have a bit more empathy and compassion. This system and this drug policy that we have and drugs, we need to flip it completely and approach it from a completely different angle to what we're doing, what we're still doing, what we did then in the 90s to what we're doing now.
So looking back then, did you have shame and guilt?
At the time, I didn't. I was upholding the law, I was doing my job, I was getting results, so I was okay with what I was doing at the time. Again, like you're saying, hindsight is a great thing, but, I have that hindsight now to look back and, it's a bit depressing sometimes when I think I didn't make any difference. I didn't make even a dint in the drug supply or demand or get really, really dangerous people off the street.
The drugs always keeps flowing. My realisation was I've written a number of books about Pablo Escobar. So researching when he started in the late 70s, he could source a kilo of coca paste for $60 from Peru or Bolivia. And because of drug laws, it was going for $60,000 a kilo in America. So drug laws made plants that were worthless more valuable than gold. Mm-hmm. And it doesn't matter if they arrest Escobar, Cali Cartel, Chapo. That money, that profit margin, the drugs, it will just always keep flowing because of laws have created the biggest profit opportunity in the history of the world for organised crime to flood the entire world with drugs, and it gets worse every year. Mm-hmm. I interviewed a doctor out of Canada just last month, and he said, I wish we could go back to the good old days of heroin because the black market gets stronger and we've got the fentanyl and all. What's it going to take? If fentanyl isn't bad enough, are we just going to keep it going and have something worse than fentanyl?
Yeah, it's scary. I think it's because what will be the end point?
Yeah.
What is going to be the end point? And it's like when will law enforcement, they don't make the laws, but the lawmakers, when will they not realise that prohibiting anything automatically creates a massive black market and a business for an organised crime gang to latch onto? You know, it's a bit like menthol cigarettes. You know, they've banned those now in Europe, and I smoke, and I smoke menthol, and it's just like, oh my God, how am I going to do that? And there's just, buy filters now, got, you know, it's, I mean, that's maybe not a good analogy, it's just sort of that, by banning something doesn't mean, like, people stop using it and people stop supplying it. Oh, it's banned. You know, as soon as you ban something, it's like, that is a great gap in the market, and how can I fill that?
It's an iron law of economics, and I think it was the economist Milton Friedman who wrote to George H.W. Bush and warned the policy is going to create all these bad things, but completely disregarded. How did you find out about LEAP?
So I didn't realise I was interested in drug reform until I got into recovery. So I'd had, it was about 4 years in recovery, so in recovery from alcohol and other drugs, that I was with a friend, and we'd started another organisation looking at what are the biggest barriers that stop people getting into recovery and maintaining recovery. Because a lot of people get small chunks of recovery, but actually maintaining recovery is quite hard. And particularly within the groups in recovery that used illicit drugs, because you know, when we talk about problematic substance use, that we tend to have drugs of choice, and that is just something that you lean towards, that's your medicine that stops the pain that you medicate on. So whether that's alcohol, whether that's cocaine, whether it's heroin, whatever your drug of choice is, or anything. That predominantly, you know, and the snobbery amongst that, you know, and those that happened, unfortunately, to get onto illicit substances because they were criminalised for that once in recovery, when you're in recovery and you're living life and you want to do better and progress in life, which for some, it's like going back to school or going to college, getting a job, you know, just making application forms out to do voluntary work even. They can't because they've got a criminal record with illicit drugs, which never gets taken off your record. And because life's hard, and then life is harder, and then it becomes, you can't see a way forward with that. For some, people relapse and they die. And it's just crazy. It's crazy. So basically, we're looking at that, and we saw how much the drug policies affected people. And, you know, we're talking about people that were predominantly ill. You know, they have an illness. And, you know, for me, I didn't understand what was wrong. You know, like saying, talk about, I didn't understand what was wrong with me in the school days. I didn't understand what was wrong with me, that I was actually ill, that I couldn't stop drinking or using.
Did it progress as you went further into the police? Did your drug...
No.
When did this start to get heavy?
It's...
And how long were you in the police for, and why did you quit?
So I was in for just over 5 years.
Okay. So you were still in your 20s when you came out?
Yeah, late 20s. And I actually took a career break because I went back to university.
Okay. What were you studying this time?
Fashion.
Fashion? Eclectic.
I say jack of all trades.
Yeah.
And that first year I went to uni, I got married, went to uni, got pregnant. So it was quite a full-on year.
So was it having a family then that made you not want to be in the police? Was that a factor?
Yeah, so, ideally, when I did my fashion career, that's what I would have liked to have done in my naivety. But the practicalities were that I had one young child. I'd just done another 4-year degree, full-time degree, and needed to pay bills. And I just couldn't go back into the police force. There was just something that I couldn't do the job that I did. Now I had children. I just, it's like, I don't know whether I'd just lose my shit with people. Probably, do something to somebody that's done bad things. I was frustrated with it. I think the frustration of all the time and energy that police officers put into, maybe in arresting someone and putting there's a lot of work that goes around getting someone to court, and like say Crown Court for serious offences, and then through a technicality, them getting off, knowing that I know that doesn't happen all the time, but it does happen quite a lot. And I just think, the law's an ass. And I think I just thought I just couldn't do that again. So I actually went back and did PE teaching because it fitted in with having young kids, and my husband's job. He decided to go self-employed, so it's just the boring factors of having a young family and paying bills.
What led then to the alcohol abuse exacerbating?
So when I look back on it, and it can be quite blurry. It's like when did I go from coming in from work, having a glass of wine, just to like loads of people do, like my friends do, to that I didn't want any sense of reality. I could not bear coming round and being present, because of guilt, shame of what I'd done, of what I'd become. It's a really blurry line from that to a 24/7 drinker, and I became a 24/7 drinker. I didn't want any sense of reality. I just could not cope with it.
All right, so a lot of people say becoming a parent, snapped them out of the lifestyle of drugs and partying. So this is unusual because you've got like an inverse trajectory. So you said I didn't like what I'd become, but prior to that, you've quit the cops, you've got a family, you've achieved a lot of really important things, you've got kids. When you say you didn't like what you become, what did you become?
I think I was very sort of dissatisfied. I felt unaccomplished, and I didn't really get the point of what am I supposed to do? What am I supposed to do? What I would love is a book with a list of instructions that this is what I've got to do to have a nice, happy, content life, and I don't know, live happily ever after, or whatever it is. And again, those feelings of low self-worth and not enough just grew. And I think because I think I felt frustrated because I'd left the police, and I'd done a degree in fashion, which I loved, but the practicalities of life, I felt that to pay bills, and I had to go back to teaching, and I couldn't follow the fashion, and I had a child, and I didn't get get a massive maternal feeling. You know, I love both my sons very, very much. But I found it extremely hard. It didn't come naturally to me. And I think it was that almost that alter ego in me that wanted to be this, to be something, not sure what. But this, the reality of this, wasn't what I wanted to be. And so, I started drinking more and more. And I was drinking, probably towards the end of my university, I was drinking like half a bottle of wine a night, maybe even a bottle in the last year. But that was like, a really high pressure stress for me. And once I'd finished it, it would get easier. And it did. But then I had my second son. And after that, that's sort of when I say, I find it really difficult to remember that blurry line of a bottle of wine a night, which I know a lot of people do. People, I've got friends that, but what it is they don't have the negative consequences that I ended up having. I was like on a self-destruct of, I didn't want to live anymore.
What age are we talking at this point of the story?
So that age, that will have been, about 35.
Right, mid-30s then. You have an existential crisis.
Yeah, that's a good way of putting it.
You're overwhelmed by
Life.
all of the things. You've suddenly got all these responsibilities, family, bills, job. And I can see all the pressure and the stresses must be building up. And then you're thinking, it all goes when you have a drink.
Yeah,
I'm liberated from that stress temporarily.
It was the answer. Alcohol was my friend, and the drugs that I used were my friend. They worked for me for a long time. They made me feel great, and I had some great times. But, for me, it didn't end like that. And it just, I went over that line of from using it to numb my feelings and get through to numbing my feelings 24/7 because I couldn't cope with how I felt, and that was with consequences of my drinking, the negative consequences, the consequences to my family, how I was with my sons, what I did. I ended up, I'm quite open about that I ended up in a police cell being arrested by people I used to work with.
Good grief. What, hold on a second. Whoa, what led to that? And can you run us through how the actual arrest came about?
Well, a couple of them I don't even know what happened because I was in blackout. One of the ones I can't remember because I was in complete blackout, and I still don't know to this day.
Because there is, when you're doing drugs and alcohol, when you're abusing it, there's a crossover line, isn't it, where you start losing your memory?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Your blackout is some people don't really know what that. I mean, I didn't really know what blackout was. I thought, like
it's where you wake up and you don't know what's happened.
Yeah, but actually, when you're in blackout, you function as you normally would. So, like, and I'm not, I'm not proud of it, and it's hard because sometimes I went into blackout when I was looking after my kids, and that feeling when I wake up, and it was literally, where are they? What have I done? And then and you piece together that they've been fed because there's remnants of food. They're in the bed and they're in the pajamas. You function, but you've just got no awareness of it. And again, you wake up, and I do that. I feel an overwhelming sense of guilt. And because the nature of it is I can't cope with those feelings, I don't know what to do with them, I'll have a drink. And then it's never just one drink. And then another one and another one. And, and again, that, people will judge me because, I'm a mother, and why couldn't I stop drinking for my kids? You know, that's the classic. You know, you know, it's like, and I used to drink on that because it would kill me, because it's like, why can't I stop because of my kids? You know, normal people would do that, and I, you know, and that is the cunning, baffling, powerful disease that addiction is, that we keep medicating and medicating, even with negative consequences. Those negative consequences aren't enough to stop us. And, you know, I wouldn't wish, you know, addiction on anybody.
I'm sure people watching this appreciate your honesty, and life is never plain sailing. We're all going through things to various degrees. Your arrest then, what happened there?
Which one?
Which one?
I know it's not. You know,
serial offender.
There's a real sort of like dark comedy in it all.
How many arrests were there?
I think 7-ish.
Over what period of time?
About a 3-year period.
It's all Bender related then?
Yeah. I was always had something in my system.
Would you just wake up in the cells and be like, how did I get here? Or did you knew what you'd actually done?
A few of them were. Again, this is, you know, not to be recommended by any stretch, and I'm not proud of it at all, but this is where the illness takes you, of drunk under the influence of drink driving. Shoplifting was a good one for me. I just go on a bender and go shoplifting. And drunk and disorderly was one that happened in blackout, and I don't remember to this day what happened. I just woke up in a cell, and my first thought was, where are my shoes? You know, I know it sounds crazy. It's like I'm in a police cell. Where the fuck are my shoes? And I had bruises all over my wrists, and I got charged with drunk and disorderly. I got fined. I got an £80 fine. But again, the guy, the custody sergeant, I knew him. I used to actually go to school. He was in the year above me at school, and he worked in a station near me. And my brother-in-law came to the cell to see me for another time. So I've had my DNA taken and photographed a few times. And
so, with your own former colleagues, then having to interact with them under these circumstances, were they like, Suzanne, what's going on with you? Snap out of this. Were they trying to like?
They just didn't know what to say.
Yeah.
And I think people don't. I mean, that's another part of the issue. People do not know what to say to someone that's actually on that one as well, with the drunk and disorderly. I got arrested twice that night because
Twice in the same night.
Because I left the police station, and I was like, oh, fucking hell, it's 4:00 in the morning. Now I'm going to get you know ridiculous thinking. And then this car sort of came past me, and someone said something. I went, oh, fuck off. And it was a police car. And they came and talked to me, and I was arsey, and they rearrested me for public order.
So were drugs involved increasing? I know you said you did ecstasy earlier on. Were you getting involved in like coke or anything else at this point with the?
I mean, I did it on nights out, and it was always it was because it was there, and with the people that I was with, they offered me it, and I took it. Yeah, and I would have taken anything, to be honest. But for me, predominantly, it was alcohol that brought me to my knees. Those, and it stops working. The crazy thing as well, like
Tolerance.
Yeah, and also as well, with coke, it wakes you up again. So it's like it wakes you up again to drink more. So, and I wanted blackout, so it was like, I'll just.
You wanted the abyss, the void. All right. So earlier on, you said you were suicidal. You wanted to die. Mm-hmm. Were you able to discuss that with your husband?
No, I didn't.
Did you hide this from everybody? You had to be the strong mum, the public persona.
I hid it, and again, that is the cunningness of the disease. Is we can hide it really well for a certain amount of time. And, you know, and I have to highlight as well, it doesn't have to get as bad as it did for me. You know, my consequences got really severe. You know, there's lots of people that got into recovery that didn't have to go that far down the path, but, you know, that is where my path led me. And, you know, I hid it for a while, and then I couldn't really hide it anymore because I was talking about 24/7 drinking, and the things that I did. You know, got arrested for drink driving, and where it took to me was that I tried to kill myself, and I tried to do that a few times. And
through substance abuse, through alcohol, or
alcohol and taking loads of tablets.
tablets.
It was. It's like when those people say, you know, oh, was that a cry for help? It's like, fucking hell. No, because I wanted to die. You know, and again, people find it really difficult to get their head. You know, you don't have to get your head around it. You know, I truly, honestly felt, and again, that's partly to do with stigma and shame and society. You know, I couldn't look after myself. I couldn't look after my 2 children. When I did, I fucked it up, acted irresponsibly. I can't stop drinking. I don't know how to stop drinking. I don't know what's wrong with me. I don't know where to go for help or what to do. I'd just rather be dead. It's going to be simpler if I'm dead. And I know you know, now I look back and go, God, thank God, you know, I didn't die. But that's where it took me, and I couldn't see another way out.
So 3 long years then of turbulence and 7 arrests. What was your relationship with your husband like over this period of time? As it,
you know, he's don't say Tony. He's still there. He's still there. He put
shout out to Tony.
Yeah. You know what? He put up with, and this is like with, you know, we push and push the boundaries, and he put up with a lot of shit until, you know, he couldn't do it anymore, and he couldn't trust me with the kids, and he couldn't. You know, I don't blame him. So he asked me to leave the home, and I left the home.
Where did you go?
So it was to my advantage in some respect. Well, do you know what? When he did that, I was like, great, I can drink what I want, do what I want. You know, this is the craziness of when you're in it, that's what you think. I haven't got them on my back, I haven't got the responsibility. So I went and got off my head, woke up somewhere, and I stayed in a room in a house. And because I was then technically homeless, it meant I could get a place in a rehab. Because the problem being is it's not that I hadn't asked for that before, it's because I had a roof over my head and a house to live in. I wasn't seen as desperate. And if anybody listening knows anything about treatment system and the services, you know, in the UK, the treatment and the services are very, very stretched. Like in the northeast of England, we don't have one residential rehab. So what that meant is I got an opportunity to go to a rehab in sunny Scarborough. Which, it's funny because like in recovery, people can get a bit jealous if you got the opportunity to go to rehab. It's awful. You don't want to go to rehab.
What's your first day like?
At rehab.
Mm-hmm.
So this place saved my life. It gave me a roof over my head and gave me space. It was like being in a bad B&B. It was like Fawlty Towers with loads of, alcohol and drug users trying to get recovery. Well, we were all held in this place. We weren't allowed out. until we got to a certain stage. Then we were allowed out. It was crazy. It was, oh.
Did you get your own room and like?
Well,
how's it work?
So the first night I was there, I got a room on my own with a nice sort of bay window. I was like, it's all right. But then the next day I got moved out to this floor, and it was a mixed rehab, and I ended up sharing a room with a woman.
And what was her story?
She was a mother of 4, chronic alcoholic.
Did you bond with her?
Yeah, well, yeah. I think I'm good at sort of adapting to different people from different places and different areas, and so I think I can get on with most people. I'm not saying they all get on with me, but so, I didn't go in there thinking I was any better or any worse. It was just like we were both a bit like, how the fuck did we end up here? But it's crazy. Yeah.
So you're completely sober in there on that first day. Is like the bottle calling your name? How do you get through the pain barrier?
I was ready for rehab. Well, saying that, it was just, this is what I have to do to get well, and that's the problem with when you're in it, and I'm open to what recovery looks like for people. For me, recovery means abstinence, because my using and drinking, I know that I can't just have one drink. I know I wouldn't be able to go out and do a line or drop, one E or anything like that, because I always, I have an addiction of more. I want more of, and I can get like that with other stuff as well. So I've forgotten what I was saying then. What were we talking about then?
I asked you
I was,
if the bottle was calling and how you got through the pain barrier.
Yeah, sorry, do you know what? I was just like, I was back in that B&B in Scarborough, just remembering it, because it's just like...
Good, take us there. Tell us what you're thinking.
So it was just like, what the fuck? It's minging.
Like it smells funny, or it's old and decrepit.
It's like a really... naff B&B that, like, God, and I'll sound like a right snob because I was looking at it like a snob, like, oh my, really? Like tatty chairs and sofas to sit on, frayed carpets. Maybe and it was just like, and it's just, so your timetable to everything, you have to go to breakfast. You have to be here at certain times. You have to do this, which again, like, how else are you supposed to run a place like that? Everything's timetabled, and you're on a rota, and you have cleaning jobs, and you get made head of the person that delegates who does the cleaning jobs. So you got people that would put people on toilets because they didn't like them, and then if you did something wrong, you get put on toilets again.
What was your first job?
I think my first job was actually cleaning the kitchens. So it was all right. I mean, I didn't mind. It was just like, it was almost like a penance. This is what I deserve, and this is how we do it. And you go, and it's abstinence based. So it was based around a 12-step program, which is quite common. I think most people know about that. And I was saying, I'm quite, now my view on recovery has changed, just like my view on drug reform, because, it worked for me. I have to be abstinence-based. I would recommend anybody to have a period of time abstinence from whatever's causing them issues. But, I've got friends that are in recovery that, that do psychedelics, for example. more to do with their mental health and spiritual side. I know people that can do a spliff on a weekend when their substance of choice was like alcohol and stuff, and that's great. But the only problem being is if they, because these is quite often seen as a cult. That's the thing that AA, NA, and those mutual aid groups are seen as cults. They're not, but it's the one thing that worked for me. I have to sort of fast forward there and say I did get chucked out of rehab because I did relapse in rehab.
What led to the moment of relapse?
I think because part of me wasn't being completely honest, as in I hadn't had enough, which is crazy when I look back at at what I'd done previously and ended up there. It was a sunny day. We were allowed out after a certain level. You're allowed out. God, this is going to sound really ridiculous. I went and bought some. Why I remember this. I went and bought a crawfish salad from Marks and Spencer's, and the thing that would make it better was a little bottle of wine, sitting on a bench, like what normal people do, and that was it.
That was your justification, what normal people do.
What normal people do, and it would make it better.
Yeah.
That'd make me, and maybe I can drink like normal people. Because that's what I didn't want to have to stop everything, because it's like the problem with recovery is you get your feelings back. And the only way I ever knew how to cope with those feelings before were to numb them. So, from that, I got away with it for a while, but then I didn't. And I was in blackout and was found outside the rehab. And again, this is the problem with treatments. Is you basically get a chance, and if you blow it, you're out. So I woke up to my bags packed and a ticket home.
How did that feel?
Oh, it's devastating. It was just like, oh God, I can feel it now. Just the waking up, going, oh fuck, what have I done? And what am I going to do? And so I did the only thing I knew what to do, which was take my bag, go and get drunk, and get a train home and turn up at my sister's.
And were you thinking about what your husband might think of you getting
kicked
out?
Yeah. I just, I've let everybody down. I'm just, so worthless that I've blown my chance. Yeah, I won't be allowed back home. I won't be allowed to see the kids. What am I going to do? I can't do it. It's too hard. I can't do it. I obviously can't do it because I can't do it in rehab.
How long did it take to snap out of that?
So I got chucked out in October, and I had my last drink on the 14th of November that year. So it was October, November, so probably another month and a half.
Because you've already been kicked out once, to get back in, is it trickier?
You can't get back in.
Or you can't get back in.
That's how it was working where I was. I'd been going to, like saying, the 12-step program. It's an anonymous program, but I'm quite open about that. Is how I got my sobriety. I'd been going to meetings, and one woman in particular was really helpful to me. She gave me a number to ring to get into rehab, and she'd connected me to this guy who was like he was a great social worker who wasn't in recovery, but he just sort of got it. He understood the illness and what it meant, where people end up, and he got me into like a sheltered housing. But then I got caught drinking, so I got. Actually, that was my last drink because I'd actually arranged for my kids to stay over. And I drank the night before, which again is like a massive self-sabotage. I did have a massive self-sabotage in me that, I didn't deserve it. So I'm gonna fuck it up. So I'll drink, because then I'll fuck it up. And then that will also reaffirm that I'm useless, I'm a waste of space, I'm unlovable, I don't belong anywhere, and that'll reaffirm it. So I did that, and then because of that, I couldn't have my kids. I wasn't allowed to see them. So that was...
How old are your kids at this stage, and how are they reacting to all of this?
Oh, bless them. Ethan would be about 4, and Mitchell will be about 8.
Aren't they like, where the bloody hell's mum gone?
Yeah, that's the... makes me feel sick thinking about it. And that's what the illness does. It's, you're in such a... It's like your own prison cell. Your own prison cell, and you don't think about other people. It's a selfish illness. It is. And I just didn't see any way out. And that was like the last straw, that I'd let them down so much, and then I wasn't allowed to see them. That was actually my last attempt to kill myself.
Oh dear. Again, through the pills and the drink.
Yeah, just anything that I went missing. I don't remember this. This is like, and it was actually my a guy. Well, this is what I'm pieced together. It was actually a guy I did my police training with, who was an inspector on the shift when I went missing, who found me
Bloody hell.
in a back alley.
Good grief.
Because I didn't want to be found, and I wanted to die. So I remember speaking to my sponsor, some dramatic way, and then I wandered off, and I went into blackout, and I was found down a back alley by the police. I think he was an inspector by then, who I used to work with, and part of me, it's like, my God, it's a miracle, because I think if it had been anybody else that didn't know me, they probably would have gone, well, she's an adult, she's a missing person, see if she turns up. She might not, or she'll turn up somewhere. And I might have completely made that up, but he looked for me, and he found me, and I got into hospital, and then I had my light bulb moment.
What went through your head?
When I woke up, well, I couldn't believe I was there, and my sponsor came to see me, and she said, well, it could have been worse. You could have been me. It was just like, fuck off. Got tubes coming out of me, and, but actually her drinking took her to a lot worse place, cirrhosis of the liver and, months to live. But she lived, and her liver's repaired, and she's like 25 years, I think, in recovery. But it was actually, you get an assessment. So I ended up sitting in front of this guy. I can't remember if he's a psychiatrist or psychologist. And I'd seen him before for my mental health, because, ongoing was depression. Do you drink because you're depressed? Are you depressed because you drink? That chicken and egg. And at the time, all I wanted was to be kept in the hospital bed, because then I couldn't do anything wrong. I wouldn't make a mistake. I wouldn't do something that would end with me picking up a drink. But, NHS is under pressure and all the rest of it. And I sat in front of him, and he basically said, well, you're not ill enough to be kept in. And I was just like, I'm not ill enough. Like, you're talking... this is like the 7th time I attempt on my life. My medical records are like this now. What do I have to do to to be sectioned, that was a good option to me. To be sectioned would be like, yes. But then, when he said it, it was literally a light bulb moment of like, I've got two choices here. I either keep doing this and I will end up dead, or I can try this AA 12 steps and I'll do everything that I'm told to do. And I chose to do that. And it'll be 13 years in November that I made that choice.
And was it what you put your kids through that gave you the strength as well? Was that a factor to do all that?
It is... I still... because of what I know now and childhood trauma, and like it kind of makes me feel really emotional that Ethan, my younger one, doesn't really remember. He was too young. Mitchell does and will. And, and again, back to what we said in the beginning, nature, nurture, genetics. In our family, there is history of addiction, and I've got no idea whether that may come out in my two children. I hope not, and I hope the way they're supported that it won't, but who knows. But what I found was, because I'd been going to meetings and because of what my sponsor had been through, she herself was a chronic alcoholic with two young children, had done the same as me. She got through it and she'd survived, and her children have, grown up. That gave me hope that I didn't know how, why or who, but maybe I could. And because of that, I think that it's made me a better person. It's made me a better mother, wife, friend, because it's that learning the I am worthy, I am lovable, and I'm enough. And I never felt that before. It's like, that's why I get so emotional with it, because I know so many people feel the same. And not everybody ends up being a 24/7 drinker and drug user.
There's people watching this right now relating, and they're exactly in that zone, what you're describing.
Mm-hmm. And I listen, I've done a lot of work on myself. It is the hardest thing I have ever had to do. Like fighting criminals, going into a club, going to a house, wired up, all that stuff. It's a piece of piss compared to what I had to do in recovery and to maintain recovery. It's not crushing every day, but it's hard work, because I get my life back, which is great, but I get my life back and I get all the feelings, and I do not have that option to be able to turn my feelings off when I'm hurt and upset or angry or, happy, sad, all those emotions. When someone does me a wrong, I can't I have to keep my side of the street clean. And I have to do the right thing because it's the right thing to do, not because I want to. Because I can't pick up a drink or drug on it. I wish I could. I wish I could. Sometimes it's just, God, I wish I could, just take something and so I can just chill out, so I can just fucking shut this head up. But, what I've been given is the tools to do that, and the whole thing of it, I think, is for people. And we all have different journeys, and we all have different experiences, and we all have traumas. But I can see them for what they are, and I don't let them then shape my future. That's my power. The only thing that I have control over is me. Like what you think of me, what people out there listening in think of me, or even if they tweet it or whatever, I have no control over. The only thing I control is me. And again, that's really hard when it's all about self-worth and loving and belonging and connection. When you believe that you don't have it, you have to do that yourself, and that's the hard work. That's the self I'm enough work is really, really hard, but it's really, really worth it. But I'm not perfect at it by any stretch.
So these experiences then have given you this deep understanding of the cycle of addiction, and because of the extremes you've gone to, it's what makes what you're saying is really powerful. So to people out there who are perhaps going through blackouts and stuff like that, what do you say to them?
I knew, one of the really interesting things that I learn is, obviously we all have substances of choice, and 90% of people that use illicit drugs don't cause any negative problems or consequences to them or anyone else. 10% of those do, and then even a smaller percent end up sort of like me, or on the streets injecting heroin or whatever. The first thing is it's like, it's that honest debate you have to be with yourself of, is this causing me a problem? Is this causing negative consequences to those that I love and are closest to me? And that can be, it can start with work, going into work. I don't have to tell you that. You people listening in know whether it's a problem or not. And then, do you want to do something about it?
So acknowledgement is the first thing, and that was my problem.
Honest.
I had a therapist in prison, and I'd been doing drugs for over 10 years, and I was telling myself, I'm just going out on the weekends having fun. I'm a party person. I'll never get addicted. And I was telling myself that even by the time the SWAT team came, like over 10 years later. And the therapist said, Sean, you got addiction issues when it starts to affect your life and your work. Because he said to me, are you a drug addict? I said, no, I just went out and partied on the weekends. And he's like, well, you got addiction issues when it affects your life and your work and your family, your relationships. Take a look around you right now. Where are you? And that was the wake-up call I needed. Because I was in denial for over 10 years. Mm. So you've got to acknowledge. So your first point then is to acknowledge that you've got the problem, the issue. Mm-hmm. And then you got to have the resolve to do something about it, haven't you? Which is hard.
It's, you have to be, lots to do with working on self-worth stuff like is, we have to be vulnerable, which I mean by I made myself vulnerable by saying, I have a problem. I have a problem with alcohol or drugs because of, and all the stigma and shame that's attached to that. But you have to dig deep and find the courage to ask for help and support. Again, it's not, unfortunately, it's not that simple because it's not always there. And where do you go? And what do you like saying? I didn't know what was wrong with me, because even though I knew I had a problem with alcohol, I wasn't an alcoholic because that's alkies and people drinking on benches and, drugs weren't, I might be all right using drugs because it's alcohol, not the drugs. I actually, it doesn't matter. And you like saying drug addicts is that shaming.
Teethless, homeless people who sleep under bridges.
Yeah,
that's what I thought a drug addict was. Not me.
Yeah, that snobbery within it, and unfortunately, there are people that do fit that image. That unfortunately through life has led them down that path to where they are. But it starts with, it's an illness. It's an illness that's treatable, and there's solutions, but very few people know about them. And it is one of the most stigmatized, judged illnesses that's out there, and misunderstood by people because they think it's a moral judgment. It's a choice. You know, you have they don't get that when you're in it, you have no choice. You know, it's your medicine. It's your best friend. It stops everything.
The thought of being without it is unbearable, isn't it? It's got such a grip on you. You've got to be high, got to be... You're not happy in your own skin, are you? It's like, until you reach that point, it senses your weakness and just keeps attacking, doesn't it? Mm-hmm. Yeah.
But there is, like saying there is... I thought, you know, in the big book has all these reads, you know, I thought I was going to be one of those unfortunate ones because, you know, I'd started going to the support groups and I was still relapsing. I was still picking up a drink. And, you know, the first drink gets you drunk is a famous quote. And I was like, what does that mean? It's not the first. It's like the 15th. I might be a bit wobbly. And it's like, yeah, but if you don't... And eventually, you know, it's like the first tablet, the first line, the first anything. That first action, if you don't do it, I won't end up in a police cell. And that took a while to learn that and understand it.
You made the decision to quit then. Were the wolves howling, and how did you resist that call?
I think I'd done enough. I haven't had... I mean, I'm human, and I think of having a drink now and again or taking something. But what I do is I have to remember, you know, because like the sun's starting to come out, you know, people drinking outside in the bars, and you've got the ice cold lager or the wine glass, and it looks so appealing, and people are sitting around and talking and laughing and having a great time. You know, I have to remember that where my last drink took me. You know, I stopped doing that sort of drinking a few years before. You know, I hadn't done that for a long time. You know, my drinking took me to a police cell or a hospital bed or death. That is what it is. And my life actually is, sounds like a cliche, my life is so much better with, in recovery, knowing what I know about myself, what to do and how to live. You know, the 12 steps for me, it's like a guide to how to live. And before, I never knew how to live before. Like saying, you know, I always felt like a fraud and I'd get found out. And, you know, I can still have imposter syndrome, you know, like, what am I doing here talking to you? It's like, what the fuck do I know? You know, I haven't done anything. And again, that's like, almost like, you know, that addict head. Yeah, shut up, get your ego in place. You don't know what you're talking about. You're rubbish. You know, that voice that I had as a kid and growing up, and that I was going to get found out. You know, I can still get that. But I've got all these other tools that I pull on, and, you know, the support and friends I have as well, because life's shit. You know, bad things happen. People die. People get cancer. Bad things happen. But that doesn't mean that, you know, everybody then ends up an alcoholic and drug addict. They don't. But it's like, it's life, and life's not fair, and it's how I get through.
All right, so you said the problem's got to be acknowledged. I really like what you said. You know, if someone's like trying to tempt you back into that lifestyle, then you say to yourself, where did this bring me to? Mm-hmm. Where did it get me previously? Because if someone offered me something, I'm immediately thinking, right, this led to SWAT team, 6 years of my life gone, your parents' heart's broken, sister's heart broken. There's just no way, you know. So if you're out there and you're going through things, then say to yourself, what has this got me? I like that. What previously, what place did this bring me to? And then that just puts all of those consequences in your head because you've got this other voice saying, you know, you could do this and relax and feel great and socialize and blah, blah. But this becomes bigger than that, doesn't it? Yeah. And you also said getting wired up and going on drug busts and going in nightclubs and SWAT team raids and all that was nothing compared to the inner battle. And it is an inner battle. So it doesn't matter what's going on around you, however your brain is wired, whatever your chemicals are doing, you've got to go deep inside yourself, haven't you, to address the root causes, to win that inner battle. So how do people do that? Because I think that's perhaps the hardest part. Because there's the acknowledging it, there's the saying, I'm not going to do this again because of the consequences, but there's the inner battle in the middle, isn't there?
I think it's isn't it? Oh, you could put that in a pill and sell it. Yeah. Make some money. It's that you have to have a level of honesty with yourself. Like, one of the things I always remember is feelings aren't facts. So, you know, if you say something to me and I feel rejected, that isn't actually the fact of the matter. You've just said something. I've read it this way, and I'm rejected. As a matter of fact, it isn't that at all. It's that, you know, that's how my head interprets stuff. So, you know, like I'd go up to somebody and I'd say hi, and they just sort of like go, "Oh, hi." It's like, oh, they don't like me. They've just rejected me. And that's what, you know, and that's how I feel. In matter of fact, that person was just really busy and they came back to speak to me later. So I always used to react to my feelings, like, again, react to my feelings straight away. So I'd feel something and I'd react. And that feeling something led me to a drink or a drug. You know, that. So now this is what I've learned through recovery, is that, you know, feelings aren't facts and they're temporary. Everything is temporary. And these feelings are often based in childhood stuff. So I have to recognise that feeling, what it is it bringing up in me, and why. And then remembering I'm not that child. That's not actually happening. I'm an adult, and if something's not clear, it's then ask the person, "Oh, did you mean this?" And they go, "No, I was just saying this because of this." Like, oh, okay.
Yeah, that's really good, because you've pinpointed your like root cause trigger mechanism, haven't you? Self-esteem, and then approval, and then your interpretation of the input from other people, how you misinterpreted that. So one of the things that therapist taught me was, you know, cognitive behavioral therapy based on Stoic philosophy, whereby Epictetus, you know, it doesn't matter what happens around us, it's our interpretation of it that matters. And ultimately we must take responsibility for our thoughts and emotions, because we, you know, someone could get in your face and say, you're a piece of shit, I'm going to do this to you, blah blah blah. You could say to yourself, that person's just mentally ill, having a bad day, and wish them well. Or you could say, yeah, I am a piece of shit, and you go away feeling horrible. But that's your decision, isn't it? So you have control of that ultimately. But until you understand that, especially as a young person, the psychodynamics are like beyond your comprehension, aren't they? So it's happening and you're reacting, but you don't understand all of the you know.
Yeah, I mean, it's ultimately taking responsibility for what I can take responsibility for.
Yeah.
Is my own thoughts and feelings. But again, being able to sort out the figment of my imagination and actually, like, you know, saying the facts about, you know, it's sort of, I don't know what I thought this, it's like, you know, but I think as well, like, younger generations, I feel a bit more hopeful for them because we more and more people are talking about this sort of being able to talk, mental health. You need to talk about what's going on for you. You need to talk about how you feel, because then somebody's got an opportunity to then say to you, okay, this is how you feel, but have you actually looked at it from this angle? And then people can start to understand, or like saying, start to understand your thought process based on stuff that happened to you as a child, which worked for you as a kid, but don't work for you in adult life. So, and again, and for me, with all the stuff that I did, that self-worth stuff, the shame and guilt and remorse that can keep people drinking and using, because we're full of shame, guilt and remorse of, I acknowledge that's where my illness took me, and I did do what I did, but I don't do that today, and I don't intend to do that tomorrow. So, but I can still get, especially when I talk about my children and what I put them through, that huge sense of shame of not being able to stop sooner or even become what I did in the first place.
So for the people watching this, then, I think, this is just so powerful what you're saying. Your honesty, you've been on the brink of death multiple times. It just, people are going to be like, wow, Suzanne's really been through this and she's come out the other side. And I salute you. I understand how hard it is. What is your life like now?
My life is so boring.
Boring is the new black.
Do you know what it is? It's like before, when I was trying to get recovery and I was in crazy stuff like that, and we'd be in a room and people would talk about spring and the flowers coming up and hearing the birds. I'd be like, what the fuck is going on here? If I turn into something like that, then shoot me now. It just like, and also like on the most, like, if I can't drink or use drugs, what the fuck am I supposed to do? Like, all the things that I did with my friends, socialising, it's all around that. It's everywhere. It's in everything. Even going to the pictures now, there's a bar. It's like, what the hell am I going to do? And then what I did realise is actually I had no life. The life I was going to die, what I was doing was that actually I now notice the birds singing and the flowers coming up. It's just like, I'm like, oh God, I'm such a cliche. But I'm
the same. I wake up and smile at the squirrels.
Oh yeah, it's just and I think it's been such a journey, but like what I valued before and after are completely different. It's like I've got, there's the same way to say, the life beyond my wildest dreams, which is true, but that isn't like, for me, it's not like, having a house in France and the big 4x4 and the yacht and all the material stuff, the new, the latest iPhone and whatever, bloody being able to control my heating by my phone or whatever it is. It's like, I wake up in the morning, in a clean bed, I have a roof over my head, my bills are paid, I have food in the cupboard, I have everything I need. Wants are just different, and it's just stuff. And I go through the day trying to be... I try each day to turn up and do the best I can. And that best can sometimes not be doing much. And sometimes I do lots of stuff, to do with, LEAP charity work and drug reform and speaking to people, which is great. And that might be slightly egoish, as in, but actually it's a passion of mine.
Let me just say to the viewers, Suzanne does all this LEAP drug reform work for free. So please support what she's doing. All the links are in the description box below the video. Sorry for interrupting.
No, thank you.
Keep going.
But you know, you see, 'cause I just get like full of like, Suzanne, shut up, you're talking shit. Because I do this, but I don't get paid for it, so I'm not contributing to my household. The pressure's on my husband. I'm not worthy. I'm worthless. I don't know what I'm talking about. You know, just like that, within 5 seconds, I can go back into that thinking really easily. But that's not the case. You know, feelings aren't facts, Suzanne. So, and it sounds really, and again, people out there probably won't get it, but as a person that's come from, you know, maybe similar to, you know, your experiences in the Phoenix jail, wasn't it, that you're in?
Yeah.
You know, I was in a cell of my own making, you know, so it was obviously really harder for me, Sean, and that's a joke. It wasn't, but, you know, I made, you know, 4 walls of my house my own prison, you know. I could have walked out any time, but I didn't, Sean. Who's the idiot? If, you know, and sometimes, you know, wake up, I feel just in a mood and fucking just life's shit, isn't it? And, you know, you drop your toast on the floor and you get a bill through the door or whatever. That when I get to bed at night and I put my head on the pillow, if I haven't drank or used a drug, that's a good day. That's a great day. And I can forget that when I go down the materialistic ego stuff avenue. You know, I'm there for my husband. I've been there for my, you know, for my kids. I try and help other people. You know, I do the charity work as well. And, you know, I try to reach out my hand to the still suffering alcoholic, you know, inside and outside, is a saying, as much as I can, as long as it doesn't affect my recovery. Because that's the other thing, I have to be as selfish with my drinking as selfish with my recovery. You know, I have to put my recovery before everything. You know, and that even becomes before my kids, because if I don't do that, I'll lose all that. So, you know, and again, you know, and that goes actually for parents, you know, being parents, if you have to look after yourself and maybe make some changes, because if you don't, you won't be there for your kids or your family members. You know, like if you're working 80 hours a week, you're not there for your kids anyway, even though you're earning the money for all the stuff. Are you really present? And it's never enough, is it?
Well, that's programmed into us, isn't it? Especially in the West. So, just go over some of the important things you touched on there. Then, when I got out of prison, I thought, right, you got to be on some kind of. I'm not going to go back to drugs, but alcohol's socially acceptable. All my mates drink. Every weekend they would just we'd go in the pubs. I was getting drunk with them. Prior to that, I wasn't really into alcohol. I just went straight to chemicals, rave scene chemicals. So then I'm doing that, getting the hangovers, a bit of a workaholic, can't work, you know, my head's all fuzzy. Moved down south, and my body combat instructor, I started hanging out with him, and he's like the life and soul of the party, and he's the last person to go home at all these house parties and stuff. And he never drank. I was like, holy shit, you can go out and have a good time without being on something. So that was my light bulb moment where I decided to not do that. And the therapist also said, if you're giving up all this lifestyle, there's a hole in you. You've got to put things in its place. So fitness became my thing then, everything from yoga to meditation, all these different classes. And, the physical, the movements, the exercise releases those brain chemicals and changes the mental, doesn't it? Mm. So how do you keep mentally sound, and do you do any kind of physical stuff?
Yeah, so I do. So I've always been sporty.
Yeah.
And also, but I also have to be aware because I did have an addiction to exercise. So, for me, I try and exercise every other day, something. It's usually, well, under lockdown, it's been running, but now I can mix that up with the gym. Because when I'm running, I can really zone out. Or I listen to sort of like people like Brené Brown, and I'm actually listening to Edith Edgar at the moment, who's a 93-year-old who was in Auschwitz.
Wow.
Who got through anyway. And it's all this, self-worth stuff. And yeah, it's my thing anyway. So I do that. I say I'm not. I try and avoid saying should. I would like to get back into my yoga because I've got an issue with my back, but I used to go regularly before lockdown to some classes, which obviously stopped, and I just couldn't do it at home. I just didn't. But I know that is very good for me, and hopefully I can start doing that again. But definitely for me, exercise is huge because I can do it and I can just zone out, and the endorphins and all the rest of it to do that. And the other stuff is we think that we have to take something to be this person that we think people will like about us and will be more will be more interesting.
Yeah.
Actually, people become a lot. I find now, noticing people drinking, they become really boring. It's like, you've told me that already. No, you have told me that already.
Bit loud and obnoxious as well.
Yeah, yes.
And the violence as well.
Oh, well, I mean, and that's the thing about it is, we have this thing, alcohol, that's socially acceptable. It's legal. It's available more or less everywhere you go, but actually causes more deaths, more harms than illicit drugs that we talk about.
It's the drug that kills the most young people in this country, isn't it? And I got a stat years ago, I don't know if it's the same, but 3 young people a week were dying from binge drinking in this country.
Yeah.
Yeah. Blows away all the other deaths of all the other drugs. Yeah.
But we don't talk about that because that's not very convenient.
The government's getting paid off. I'm sorry to detract there. So you're saying then, all right, we do predominantly personal life stories on this channel. But I think it's great that all these life lessons that are transferable to people watching, some of whom may be going through things, some of whose lives could be changed by what you've said. So you've got acknowledging it, you've got the battle with the inner battle, root causes and demons. Once you got through that, then you remind yourself, if I go back to this, here's where it took me last time. And finally, you've got, channeling your energy into other things that are going to make you happy, because you can be happy without being partying and doing a lot of other stuff. And exercise is really important, I think. So that's a great way to round up the life lessons component of what we talked about. Yeah. And is there anything you would like to say then in conclusion to the people watching this?
Oh, I think, wherever you're at, it's really important to take courage and speak your own truth. And that's sometimes something that is ugly and people might not want to hear or listen to. I think from a side of, if you are struggling with substances, that, you're not alone. There are people out there that can help and support you. And it's an illness, it's not something you've brought on yourself. It's not because you're a bad person or you've done something wrong. It's an illness, and it's a progressive illness, and it gets worse. But there is help and support out there.
All right. The other audience I want you to address is the police people watching this, because they are out there. They come up to me sometimes and they say, look, I watch your podcasts. I agree with you about the war on drugs, but there's nothing we can do about it. I can't even speak out about this. I get these orders from above, and we've got to do what we're told. But my thing is, I'm thinking if enough of these good cops watching shows like this stand up to their bosses and say, look, I joined to arrest the paedophiles, the predators, the big time drug traffickers, but not to mass incarcerate vulnerable people with addiction issues. Some of these elite cops say they were assigned to infiltrate student groups and get them smoking weed so they could get all these arrest quotas, lowest hanging fruit. Private prisons, tens of billions a year, all this, private prisons putting money up to tighten drug laws so more kids can go to prison where they end up on heroin in America joining neo-Nazi gangs. What future is that for the young people? Criminal records, like you've pointed out, they can't get jobs. What do you say to the cops? Because it's people in the system, I believe, can get changes made internally. The politicians... They've come to my talks and they've had an emotional reaction and promised the world, and I never hear from them again. Mm-hmm. What do you say to these people who can make changes in the system?
It is. I mean, I understand the frustrations, of the laws. The laws are there, and the police are there to uphold them. But unless people that are in the system that are upholding these laws and they see clearly that they're not working. And there's more injustices from that. They're locking up the wrong people, they're criminalising the wrong people. It's not. This law is making no difference to, like saying the Misuse of Drugs Act, 1971, to stopping the supply and demand of drugs. It's clearly shown, and we know, as police officers out there, it's not working. And unless we start speaking out about this, who else are best placed to say, look, these laws are not working, they're not fit for purpose, look, they're not working, who else is? And I know that can be difficult when you've got people above you that you may feel that you can't, but reach out to us at LEAP. We're happy to come and speak to people, show them the evidence that it's not working, show other ways where people have legalised and regulated drugs, solutions and treatments that other countries have done, that save lives and stop people dying and stop criminalising people pointlessly because of this archaic drug policy that we have in place. So take the courage to stand up for what's right.
Look at all the cops who die on raids, drug raids that don't achieve anything.
Yeah.
They don't stop the drugs. And was it Neil Woods who said, I arrest a burglar, burglary stop. I arrest a murderer stop. Shoplifter, shoplifting stops. Arrest a drug dealer and just mayhem ensues because they're all fighting over the turf. And then the drugs stop, the flow of the drug stops for 5 seconds. Yeah. But the dealers are right back out on the street. And didn't you say as well in one of your talks, I think it was to Chris Thrall, shout out to Chris Thrall, we've had him on a couple of times and he's got a brilliant channel. It's really grown. Ex-military. I think you said 67% of people in prison, it's like low-level drug stuff.
Yeah, well, it's the facts for you. It's actually the Bromley report that's out, and it's 67% of prisoners in prison are there for acquisition crime. So not necessarily they're arrested for drugs, but 67% of them are there for acquisition crime, which they've committed in order to get the drugs that they need to, because they're ill.
And they're not potheads either. They're mostly people who are addicted to heroin, aren't they? Mm-hmm. It causes a massive amount of acquisitive crime. And hence Portugal has seen this collapse. And that programme that the Portuguese implemented actually started in my hometown, Widnes.
Right.
Yeah. But I think Johan Harry wrote about it. Shoplifting collapsed so much they were going to roll it out across the country. And then the Americans found out about it. And one call to Downing Street, closed down. Status quo makes the most money. Why do we want to improve the world? And so it's an absolute travesty that the status quo is creating everything from knife crime in London, the majority of it, young people competing over the black market in drugs created by drug laws, to hundreds of thousands of people dead in Mexico.
Yeah.
And there are people profiting from this who don't want it to end. In fact, if it gets worse for these people, they will make even more money, tens of billions a year, private prison contracts, and they're kicking down Oh, mere millions a year to the politicians of all parties to keep it in place. And that is absolutely sick. Mm-hmm. All right, so Suzanne has come in here and bared her soul, give us some very important life lessons, especially for people who are going through things, been on the brink of death multiple times. And I think it's just so powerful, for her to come through that and now to be giving her own time, not to be getting paid anything, to do all of this campaigning for LEAP, to be there. What's your title with LEAP again?
So LEAP, Law Enforcement Action Partnership, I'm co-executive director.
And these people, including Neil Woods, including Simon McLean, that was a bloody funny podcast we did with him. He's hilarious. The Scottish guy, if you didn't see that one, I'll put it on the ex-cop playlist. Giving their own time to try and make the world a better place. And it's tearing the fabric of society apart. Drug laws, how bad has it got to get? Fentanyl, the massacres in Mexico, knife crime in London. What's it going to take to get it reversed? It's common sense. I know the younger generation see the sense in it, but there's this old generation profiting from the status quo, the tens of billions a year, private prison contracts, prison guards unions putting money up to tighten drug laws and keep people in prisons for longer. And it's mostly like the lowest hanging fruit that going in, the young people going in, and then they come out with heroin addictions and neo-Nazi tattoos. If they're in, if it's the American system, that's what I saw firsthand. So support LEAP, support Suzanne. All the links are going to be in the description box. What can people do for LEAP? They can click over to the website, and what kind of action can they take? Can they donate to LEAP? And
all the information should be on the LEAP website, which is ukleap.org. Obviously, you can put the www in front of that, and reach out to us.
Can people volunteer? Can people donate money? Yeah. What kind of roles would you be looking for at LEAP for people to volunteer?
Well, we're actually having an AGM on the 7th of June, which you need to be a member for because we've just become a charity, but you can sign up for that. But, reach out to us and let's have a conversation.
I'm an associate member, I think, of the US LEAP. Mm-hmm. How much does it cost to be an associate member or a full member of the UK LEAP?
It doesn't cost anything. It's sort of donation based.
I see. Okay. Now, if people want to contact you, individually, are you on Twitter or any of those, Facebook, any of those platforms?
I'm actually rubbish on social media. I'm not. But also, again, if you reach out to the UK LEAP website and information, my work email, I can give you that. Shall I give people that? Or
if you want to put it out there, you might get some weirdos, because a lot of people watch these videos. There's always some weirdos. It's up to you.
Well, I say just go through the website, and then I've got Jason there to buffer me.
Okay, so please let us know in the comments what you thought about today's video. Huge thank you to all the new subscribers. Subscription logo is in the bottom corner of the screen, and we try to finish our podcast with a hug. We have had a few guests have danced, but we'll finish. I know you're an old school raver, so let's finish it with a hug.
Okay.
Cheers. Oh, brilliant! Thank you very much. Yeah. We'll get you to do the old.
You get the right tunes on.